Hey everybody, welcome. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
All right, everybody. Glad that you're here with us tonight. We're having yet another great late night conversation. So if you are watching right now, I appreciate having you here. We are going to follow our usual format, which is first my opening remarks, followed by the roll call. And then after the roll call, which is after my opening remarks, I then answer people's questions for the remainder of the night. So if you have something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, all you need to do is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin and send your question. We're already starting out with one question from Christine. A question's already come in. So Christine will have the first question. She sent a good question, long question. And if you're watching, you don't have to send these while I'm on air. You watching this tomorrow or the next day, you can still send your questions. Buy me a coffee. You send it in. You can be anonymous. You can ask a really long question if you want. All good. We do accept super chats because we are monetized once again. So send super chats. If I get more than 10 super chats, I will play the new China song, which is a favorite here. So far, since we've been monetized, we haven't had a night where we've had 10 super chats. That is my goal. So if people want to send super chat questions, that would be awesome. Buy me a coffee is great as well. But you can also do Rumble rants if you're on the Rumble. But yeah, just ask good questions. Second half of the show is all you guys asking great questions. Now, in terms of announcements, we do have a lot coming up. The Center for Political Innovation. Our big focus is August. In August, we're having our national convention in Chicago. That'll be on August 15th. And around it, we're having our national 7-day training program, the 12th to the 19th. Join us in Chicago. It's going to be very, very awesome. If you come and you're a CPI member, you can become fully accredited as a member. And if you attend and you learn more about CPI, it's a great opportunity to find out what our group is all about. Spend some time with us. Lots of great activities, education, outreach, all kinds of stuff. One thing we'll be doing during the convention, during the 7-day workshop, is on August 14th, the Friday before the convention, we'll be having a France out of Africa demonstration at the French consulate in Chicago to support the Union of Sahel States, the great African leader Ibrahim Traoré, struggling for the independence of Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger. We're going to say France out of Africa, stand with the Union of Sahel States. It's going to be a great, great event. So I hope that you will join us. The Center for Political Innovation is a great organization. We got a lot going on. I'm looking to go around the country in July. We're trying to figure out logistics of that. We had a great CPI meeting for members this afternoon. We had our Saturday members meeting that was really, really great. And we're just a spectacular community of people dedicated to connecting America with the rising new economy, defeating imperialism, dare to struggle, dare to win. That is our mantra. We are a great group. This is us, the Center for Political Innovation. Yep, that's us. We are the Center for Political Innovation, the optimistic, constructive movement demanding an end to imperialism and a new America where working families come first. That is what we are fighting for, and we are building a movement, and great things are happening. And around the country, people are excited and getting involved, and new memberships are trickling in, and our members are doing outreach. Our members out in LA went to an event today, and our members out in Chicago are planning different things, and our members in Minneapolis were doing outreach and making new connections today. And yeah, we're just going and going and going, and we're going to kick off the Finish the American Revolution tour here in New York City on July 2nd. So much is happening. So much is happening. So join the Center for Political Innovation, because that's where it's at, folks. That is where it's at, and we are America's anti-imperialist movement. Now, as I said before, if you've got something you would like us to talk about in the second half of the show, send a question. Questions are always appreciated. Buymeacoffee.com is still the best way to send them, but super chats are appreciated. My goal is to do 10 super chats in a night. Then we can play the new China song that is a favorite of people on here. So yeah, Rumble Rants, buymeacoffee.com, send questions. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome. I am so glad to see you all tonight. So obviously the title of this stream tonight is Trump Loves Inflation and the Biolabs Are Real. And so I guess we'll just talk about both of those things. The first thing is Donald Trump said, "I love inflation," and that is amazing, because he certainly didn't love it when Biden was in office. And the inflation that we had under Biden was nothing compared to the inflation that we're dealing with now. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Trump's campaign, he was saying, oh, Biden inflation is awful, and he was going to get the inflation under control, affordability, and all of this. And on Thursday, Donald Trump dropped a bombshell on the American people, and he said, quote, "I love inflation." Now let's put the video on, right? We're not taking him out of context, really. I mean, he does make some interesting statements while he says it, but we're not misrepresenting him. Sometimes a quote like that can be misrepresentative. You know, when a politician makes a statement, you know, and it's that blatant, you got to look into it. Well, we looked into it. This is what Trump actually said. This is the full context of Donald Trump saying, "I love inflation." And it's really something else. And I'm going to put that on here. Let me just pull up the video. Donald Trump saying that he loves inflation. He loves inflation. Here we go.
Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning, could that be a
No, I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why? Because as soon as this war is over, you know, I can say it now. Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now. And I said, you know, the bad part is the stock market will go down by a lot based on predictions of experts, like 25%. And it was worth it. To me, it was worth it, not to have a nuclear weapon. And the other thing is that oil would go to $250 a barrel. It's at 85.
Can you expect inflation to come down between now and
when the war is over?
Yes.
It's coming down.
Yeah, that was some epic economic stupidity there. He loves inflation because after the war is over, it'll end. Well, that's great. Well, maybe we shouldn't have had it to begin with. And he says it's worth it because the Islamic Republic of Iran is not going to get a nuclear bomb. Well, the Islamic Republic of Iran was never going to get a nuclear bomb. Their position for the past 47 years has been that they do not seek nuclear weapons. Now, that could change as a result of the current conflict. However, they're not trying to acquire a nuclear bomb. Nothing in Iran at this point has violated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have fulfilled all their obligations. Every nuclear site is monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. There's not a single thing that Iran has done that they are not allowed to do under the International Atomic Energy Agency's oversight and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. the entire crisis is completely manufactured. Now, if Iran were to start moving toward getting a nuclear bomb, that would be in violation of the IAEA, and they would raise the alarm because as signatories of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, they have the right to peaceful nuclear energy, and every site is monitored. They were never going to get a nuclear bomb, and their position for the past 47 years has been we are not going to get a nuclear bomb. And mainstream media just pretends otherwise. And there is absolutely no justification for this war. There was no provocation. Nothing happened. Iran didn't attack its neighbors. Nothing happened to cause this war other than Israel wanted it. The Zionists in Israel wanted this war, and America, which is under their control, decided to do it. And that's it. There was no provocation. There was no threat. There was nothing. Right? This is a completely unprovoked war. Right? This is on the level of the invasion of Iraq, but at least with Iraq, they had a convincing argument that Iraq, might have weapons of mass destruction. They got up at the UN and they lied, but they lied and tried to convince us. In this case, they don't even have a convincing lie that Iran is trying to get a nuclear bomb. They have absolutely no evidence of them doing anything that they're not allowed to do. Right? We remember Colin Powell at the United Nations lying before the world, held up a vial in his hand. Right? Should we hold up this image of Colin Powell with the vial? Right? Colin Powell vial. It's kind of important in light of the other topic, but he held up proof of supposedly of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. Here's Colin Powell at the United Nations saying he had in his hand proof that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It was a well-constructed lie, to get us, into war with Iraq, to justify the U.S. invasion of Iraq. It was a lie, but they at least, put on a good show, and they brought a vial and everything. Right? This is the famous picture of Colin Powell saying before the United Nations what he knew was not true and lying to the world in order to convince us, that we needed to invade Iraq. Here, let me put a version of it on here that I can show. All right. Colin Powell at the United Nations with his vial telling us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It was a fact. It was totally true. Iran tried to purchase yellow cake uranium. Iran tried to get tubes for a nuclear power station. All this stuff. It was all a hoax. But it was an elaborate hoax. I mean, they did lie to us and give us a convincing lie. However, the current war, there's nothing. There is absolutely nothing. And in fact, a year ago, Trump bombed and destroyed one of Iran's peaceful nuclear energy power sites, and almost all their peaceful nuclear energy program was demolished last year in the war. So at this point, there is absolutely no justification for this. And Trump's argument is he loves the inflation because it'll come down. It'll come down eventually. Well, you might as well love unemployment because eventually the people will get jobs. I mean, this is just, there's no logic to this whatsoever. This reveals how captured the Trump administration really is and how it's not what people voted for. People voted for Trump and we got what Kamala Harris promised: more war, more interventions, and more lies. Speaking of lies, though, the best person in Trump's administration is about to leave. I believe, I don't know when her last day officially is, but Tulsi Gabbard is about to leave the Trump administration, supposedly because of her husband's cancer, but it looks like there's more to it than that, right? Rumors indicate that it's about this war in Iran, which she didn't want. People look at her old tweets talking about how she didn't want a war with Iran, etc. People look at the fact that RFK's daughter-in-law resigned at the same time that she did, or that Joe Kent's public resignation. People look at it and say that Tulsi Gabbard's resignation was about more than simply her husband's cancer, but she's being strategic and not, leaving the Trump administration as an enemy, right? Which is what happens, right? I mean, if you have a falling out, look how vicious Trump has been to Marjorie Taylor Greene and to Tucker Carlson and to Candace Owens and others. So as she was leaving, Tulsi Gabbard dropped a bombshell. And in the capacity of my job at RT, I reported on Tulsi Gabbard's bombshell that she did as she left office. And we're going to talk about this tonight. But this was my reporting. I was on Roosevelt Island in New York City. You can see me there with a shot of the city behind me over the river. On Roosevelt Island, I reported on Tulsi Gabbard's great revelation as an RT reporter. Here we go.
Has called out the Biden administration for denying U.S. involvement in the project.
Today, I'm releasing new evidence of long-standing U.S. government funding of more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries. Now, these biolabs include labs in places like Ukraine. Many of these U.S. government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, and in some cases included dangerous gain-of-function research with very little visibility or oversight. Despite the obvious potential for catastrophic global impact that research on dangerous pathogens in biolabs can have, politicians and so-called health professionals like Dr. Fauci, as well as entities within the Biden administration's national security team, lied repeatedly to the American people about the existence of U.S.-funded and supported biolabs.
Tulsi Gabbard, the former congresswoman from Hawaii, who is the outgoing director of national intelligence for the Trump administration, she's in the process of stepping down, but today she revealed a huge amount of information about these biolabs. And the documents that she released confirm that there are 40 biolabs operating in Ukraine, and that these biological research facilities engaged in anthrax experiments, experiments with tuberculosis, swine fever, Ebola, and that they were doing what's called gain-of-function research, which is experimenting to try and make these germs more infectious, more deadly, more transmittable to human beings. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense has raised the alarm about these biolabs for quite some time, saying that U.S. biological warfare experiments were taking place, and this was tied in with the U.S. military defense industry. The biolabs were revealed in 2017 by an expose here on RT, and they exposed that not only were these biolabs in existence, but they were engaged in trying to genetically target Russians, that they were trying to acquire genetic material from currently living Russians for their experiments, that they were involved in developing weapons of mass destruction. It was quite damning, the information that Russia brought forward. Now, when the special military operation launched in February of 2022, we had Russian troops acquiring all kinds of documentation confirming that these biolabs did in fact exist, and that biolabs existed in Lugansk, they existed in Donetsk, they existed in Kherson. However, at the time when Russia brought this information to the United Nations and to other international bodies, there was a flat denial from U.S. administration officials. Here's what we heard from the American government regarding what Russia brought forward about these biolabs and their dangerous activities in Ukraine.
The Russian accusations are absurd. They're laughable. And, in the words of my Irish Catholic grandfather, a bunch of malarkey. There's nothing to it. It's classic Russian propaganda.
The United States government does not own or operate biological laboratories in Ukraine. Full stop.
Ukraine does not have a biological weapons program. There are no Ukrainian biological weapons laboratories.
Now, the information that the Russian Ministry of Defense brought forward about these biolabs was quite disturbing. It talked about illicit experiments on human beings. It talked about how there was an effort to develop diseases that were more infectious, gain-of-function research that would be specifically aimed at people with Russian genetics. Here's what the Russian Ministry of Defense warned the world about starting from 2017.
We have no doubt that under the guise of ensuring global biosecurity, the US has been conducting dual-use research, including the development of biological weapons components in close proximity to Russia's borders.
So after flat out denying that these biolabs existed, accusing Russia of spreading conspiracy theories, attacking Tulsi Gabbard herself and calling her a foreign asset just for pointing this out, we now have loads of documents revealed by the U.S. government from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence showing that these biolabs did in fact exist and they were engaged in the very dangerous operations that Russia warned the world about. So we'll have to keep listening and see if U.S. officials come forward and apologize for having denied what Russia pointed out and what is now confirmed to be 100% true. Yeah, these kinds of situations, on the one hand, it's validating. It is validating that Tulsi Gabbard is showing that U.S. government files and U.S. government documents confirm that these biolabs were not a conspiracy theory. They actually did happen. They are real. And, you know, we all knew they were real. I mean, we all knew that. Victoria Nuland spoke about them on the floor of Congress with Marco Rubio. So we know that they were real. But the gaslighting, they call that gaslighting. You ever hear the phrase gaslighting? Gaslighting is one of these words I'm hesitant to use, right? Because it's so abused, right? It sounds like a triggered internet feminist. Oh my God, you're gaslighting me. Oh, you disagree with some woke person. Oh, you're gaslighting me. Oh. Well, no, gaslighting refers to a real thing. It actually comes from a movie. I don't remember the name of the movie. What's the name of the movie that the phrase gaslighting comes from? Gaslighting. From what movie? It comes from the movie Gaslight from 1944. There you go. Well, what other movie would it come from? But basically, it's a movie where a man is trying to convince his wife that she is mentally ill. So he keeps turning on the gaslight and then telling her it's off or something like that, in order to cause her to have mental illness, to believe that she is mentally ill, to question her own sanity. He basically tells her things that are true, that are very obviously true or not true. There was a huge amount of gaslighting because Victoria Nuland said on the floor of a congressional hearing that the biolabs existed. And I'll show you. I mean, at the time, everybody knew these biolabs were real, and it was on the record. And I will show you the clip of Victoria Nuland and Marco Rubio, our current Secretary of State, who was at that point not Secretary of State. When Biden was president, when the story first surfaced, it was acknowledged that these biolabs were real. And this is Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of the Undersecretary of State, who handled Russia, was the anti-Russia fanatic of the Obama era, right? Obama and Biden's anti-Russia fanatic. This is the exchange she had with Marco Rubio, then a U.S. Senator, about the biolabs, and she acknowledged that they were real. This was their exchange. Again, this was their exchange. I'll just put the video on. At the time, we all knew they were real.
A minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
Yeah. So right then, the Undersecretary of State, Victoria Nuland, absolutely admitted that they existed. But yet, when Russia came out with the report about these biolabs, They were just gaslighted like you wouldn't believe. And you heard it. It's a bunch of malarkey. Russia's spreading conspiracy theories. Linda Thomas at the United Nations. Russia is spreading conspiracy theories. This is just a bunch of malarkey. This is what my Irish Catholic grandfather would have said, a bunch of malarkey. You know, and it was all true, right? And we knew it was true from the beginning. It was in 2017 that Russia first revealed that these biolabs existed. And it was an expose on RT. Right? Everyone says, "Oh, don't believe RT. That's propaganda." Well, no, it wasn't. They were telling the truth the whole time. 2017, right? RT revealed that these biolabs existed, that Ukraine was developing chemical and biological weapons and doing experiments to develop chemical and biological weapons to target Russians on an ethnic basis. Pretty crazy stuff. Then, after the special military operation got going in February of 2022, Russian troops got their hands on the labs and acquired all kinds of written documents and released it at the United Nations. And there were special sessions of the UN Security Council, which I covered, where Russia read into the record the evil things they were doing. And it was far beyond. I mean, it was... You want to talk about crazy, crazy, evil shit. It was crazy what they were planning to do, what was discovered. First of all, they were doing experiments on human beings, right? This is like Dr. Mengele stuff from the Holocaust, right? They were experimenting, taking people out of mental health facilities, infecting them with germs to see what would happen, letting them die. I mean, it was really evil what they were doing to their own people, right? You know, they're claiming, you know, I mean, just really evil what they were doing. Gain of function research. It's important to talk about that word. That comes up a lot, right? When we're talking about diseases and vaccines and all that. What is gain of function research? That's like a euphemism. Gain of function research is research done for the purpose of making a germ or disease more deadly and more infectious. Now, why in the world would you do that? You would think you would have the opposite. You'd want to find a way to cure the germ or cure the disease. But gain of function research is something that the satanic forces that run our world, that are Malthusian, that want to drive down the population, that think there are too many people in the world, gain of function research is something that they do. And they do it all over the world. They have whole networks of biolabs where they find tuberculosis. I mean, these labs in Ukraine, they were doing experiments with tuberculosis, with swine flu, swine fever, with anthrax, trying to make these diseases more deadly and more infectious. That's the last thing that anyone should be doing. And it was tied in with the U.S. Department of Defense, contracted by everything that Russia said was 100% true. And they were doing experiments on human beings. And they were trying to develop the weapons to be targeting people based on their heritage, based on their ethnicity. And at the time, Tulsi Gabbard, who was at that point a former congresswoman from Hawaii, she spoke up about the issue, and they called for putting her in jail. Whoopi Goldberg called for her to be jailed. They said she was spreading Russian propaganda, spreading conspiracy theories. Well, Victoria Nuland said it on the floor of Congress. Tulsi Gabbard spoke about it. And Whoopi Goldberg on The View called for her to be jailed, right? Let me see if I can find that clip. Whoopi Goldberg, right? Tulsi Gabbard, jail. Let me see if I can find that. I mean, it's just so unbelievable the way they viciously went after Tulsi Gabbard for talking about this issue. RFK talked about it, and he talked about how they were developing this, and RFK raised that issue. Yeah, but here's let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is the clip of yeah. Here, let me see if I can find the clip where she calls, Whoopi Goldberg called for Tulsi Gabbard to be imprisoned. Yeah, let me find that clip for you all, because that's worth watching. The point is, when you have a stream like this, right, often they lie in mainstream media and they laugh off something that's true and all of that. And then they just reveal that it's true, and we just are supposed to forget what they said. And so we need to just go over how they reacted to a very, very, very true thing. You know, to a very, very, very true statement. You know, we need to just go over this because, I mean, we can't let them forget. We cannot let them forget. Whoopi Goldberg's an interesting character. We'll talk about that afterwards. But I want to find the clip. I want to find the clip of this because it's very, very, very important. What Whoopi Goldberg, the way she reacted to Tulsi Gabbard. I'm having trouble finding the clip, of course, right? Tulsi Gabbard, Whoopi Goldberg, Biolabs. Let's find the clip because people need to see it, right? People need to see it. Tucker Carlson talked about it. Yeah, I mean, it's infuriating the way that they reacted to people telling the truth about these biolabs. And I just want to show you, it wasn't just, yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Okay, well, I'll pull it from the Rubin report. Here we go. All right, I found a version of the clip I can pull from the Rubin report. You got to see what happened. So Tulsi Gabbard, you know, as a former congresswoman from Hawaii, as a conservative, she went over to the Republican Party. She spoke up about these biolabs, and The View, Whoopi Goldberg on The View on national television, was just so outraged that, that this happened, right? All right, here we go. Here we go. Let's pull up the clip. Let's pull up the clip. This is important, folks. You know, when we have to remember, they didn't just lie. They didn't just lie. They didn't just gaslight us. They really, 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 really lied. And that's why we have to rub their faces in it. So yeah, I'm just going to pull up this clip and we're going to recall how badly they lied about this. So yeah, hold on. I'm just waiting for the clip to show up on my desktop and then we'll bring it on here. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't know why it takes so long for clips to show up on your desktop, but we're going to show it on the desktop here. Hold on. Hold on. I find it very annoying when things take a long time to come up on your computer screen. But yeah. But yeah, well, we're going to pull the clip up. I'm sorry. It's taking so long. I hate technical difficulties. Very annoying. Very, very annoying. There we go. All right. Now it finally showed up on my desktop. And so now I can bring on the clip. Okay. Here we go. All right.
And I think DOJ, in the same way that it is setting up a task force to investigate oligarchs, should look into people who are Russian propagandists and shilling for Putin. That's being, if you are a foreign asset to a dictator, it should be investigated. In fact, I remember when Tulsi Gabbard, and I even hate that we're discussing it because I think to myself, who is this woman? She's she's no longer in Congress. She's a failed presidential candidate. Yeah. She only practically exists on Twitter. And the fact that we're giving her oxygen is what makes her relevant, that we're talking about her on hot topics. But on the other hand, how do you not call out something that is repeating false Russian propaganda and that has been brought down?
They used to arrest people for doing stuff like this. If they thought you were colluding with a Russian agent, if they thought you were putting out information or taking information and handing over to Russia, they used to actually investigate stuff like this. And I guess now, there seems to be no bars.
These people are crazy. Like they're legit.
Yeah. Let's go through this clip bit by bit because it is just so vile. This is how they responded to Tulsi Gabbard saying what we now know is all completely true, right? Keep in mind, Tulsi Gabbard has now released loads and loads of documents showing that the whole time they're on national TV calling for, not only saying it's false, but saying that she should go to jail for saying it. And it was all true.
But I think that's an incredibly relevant question. Yeah. And I think DOJ, in the same way that it is setting up a task force to investigate oligarchs, should look into people who are Russian propagandists and shilling for Putin.
You hear that? So if you say something that is pro-Russian, they should investigate you. And they did it to the Uhuru movement. They dragged them into federal court for, and they could have gotten convicted and gone to prison for 15 years just for their pro-Russia speech. So on national TV, they're saying that they should look into people who say things that might help Russia and throw them in jail. You think that's a little bit scary, just the fact that they're even throwing this out there on this show, this supposedly progressive show for women and all of this, women of color. Oh, Caleb, you're racist. You're criticizing a show of women of color. Oh, you must be racist. You know, anyone who doesn't want war with Russia is a white supremacist, Caleb. You're criticizing a show. Yes, I am. I think that I should be able to say that biolabs exist, whether Russia thinks that or not. I think I should be able to call for the USA to have a better relationship with the rising new economy in the world. It is absolutely infuriating. If you do not think that just because Trump sold out and Trump has been an awful president, that these progressive forces are not just as fucking evil. Listen to her right now. She wants the FBI to drag you to jail for saying true things because Russia might like them. But let's continue.
If you are a foreign asset to a dictator, it should be investigated. In fact, I remember.
Yeah, what about the Israeli foreign assets? What about, half all of Congress are being assets to the Israelis and their mass murder that's been condemned by the UN and condemned by everybody? I guess that's okay, right? We're just going to let that go.
When Tulsi Gabbard, and I even hate that we're discussing it because I think to myself, who is this woman?
She's a member of Congress. She's now the director of national intelligence. She's actually a rather important figure. And this is like such a Hollywood burn. This is such an LA, like, oh, who are they anyway? Oh, I don't know who you are. And this is like such a very, like, this is the kind of insult that a narcissist makes, right? I always get this, right? I always get this from certain types of people. You get certain types of people who come in, come in and start, criticizing me, certain trolls or whatever. And then they always come back with, well, no one knows who you are. Well, really, you're arguing with me. You're making videos defaming me. I think you do know who I am. But that's a very Hollywood, like, who are they? No one's talking about this person. Your worth is how much you're in the newspaper. I mean, it's like such a lame, liberal Hollywood elitist smear, right? It's just such a superficial, individualistic, narcissistic, like their name's not in the headlines. Who are they? It's so any person who would make that kind of dig, is already just revealing themselves to be utter scum just to begin with. But you're making it about a member of the U.S. Congress, an important anti-war voice, who is now the director of national intelligence. So just continue.
She's no longer in Congress. She's a failed presidential candidate. Yeah. She only practically exists on Twitter. And the fact that we're giving her oxygen is what makes her relevant. That we're talking.
Oh, no one knows who she is. She's not famous like us. Oh, yes. Well, yeah, my face is on The View calling for people to go to jail for disagreeing with the government. I'm special. I'm important. I'm relevant, not like her. These kind of people can shove it up their ass. They really can. That's like such a, whoever this woman is, she's somebody famous. I don't even know her name, mind you. I know Tulsi Gabbard's name. I don't know this woman's name. I'll just tell you that she's revealing herself in thinking that this is an effective argument against Tulsi Gabbard is, the fact that she even goes there is just like, oh, I'm special. Oh, shut up. Tulsi Gabbard's way more special and important than you'll ever be.
about her on hot topics. But on the other hand, how do you not call out something that is repeating false Russian propaganda that has been brought down?
It is true, though. It's true. And it was true when Victoria Nuland said it. It was true when RT revealed it in 2017. It was true when Russia brought the documents to the United Nations. And it's true now when Tulsi Gabbard has released thousands and thousands of pages about it. It's true. It's not Russian propaganda. It's true. It's true. And she's on national TV calling for her to go to jail, calling for people to go to jail for saying true things.
To arrest people for doing stuff like this. If they thought you were colluding with a Russian agent, if they thought you were putting out information or taking information.
That's right. We used to have the House Un-American Activities Committee that used to destroy people's lives and careers because they disagreed with U.S. foreign policy. The FBI went after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with their COINTELPRO program. Eugene Debs was thrown in jail for years because he opposed World War I. Yeah, is that what we want to bring back? Is that a good thing in America's history? Yeah, we used to arrest people for that. Geez, we used to do a lot of bad things. You know, we used to have slavery in this country. Maybe we should bring slavery back too while we're at it. You know, maybe we should, maybe we should, they used to not let women vote, I mean, just saying. I mean, that's like such an awful thing to say.
To Russia. They used to actually investigate stuff like this, and I guess now, there seems to be no bars.
These people are
really, there's no bars. I mean, they raided the Uhuru movement's house. They flew drones into the home of Chairman O'Malley. The FBI stormed into their buildings. I mean, but I guess they don't do anything. The FBI doesn't look into it now. I mean, you want to talk about utter nonsense. Yes. Whoopi is a moron. Now, I will say there's some things about Whoopi Goldberg, and then we'll move on because I got more to say about this. Whoopi Goldberg is a strange character. First of all, Whoopi Goldberg, surprise, surprise, is not actually her name, but she's from Brooklyn, New York, and she adopted the name Whoopi Goldberg as a name. And everybody knows Goldberg is a Jewish name. It's a Jewish stereotypical name. And she adopted that name because she thought it would get her ahead in show business, right? So she already kind of bought into certain stereotypes and other things like that, which is interesting. The other thing that's weird is Whoopi Goldberg apparently lived in East Germany for a while. And there's clips of her defending East Germany and saying East Germany wasn't so bad. And even weirder is at one point when she had her own TV show on PBS, she did a sit-down interview with Tom Metzger, the leader of White Aryan Resistance. And it almost looked like they were on a date. I will show you clips of that. That is one of the most bizarre things. And I think it may be related to the fact that she's from Brooklyn, and maybe even though this guy is a white supremacist, that maybe she harbors resentments against Jewish people or something. It was very odd. But I'll show you. I'm not going to show the whole interview, but like it's one of the weirdest things. 1992, Whoopi Goldberg had her PBS show, and she brought on the co-leader of the Ku Klux Klan with David Duke, Tom Metzger, who at that point was leading what was called White Aryan Resistance. And if you look at the clip, it looks like they're on a date, and she's smiling and joking with him. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. And I have to wonder what that was about, the living in East Germany thing is a little strange also, I must admit. She wants people to go to jail for spreading Russian propaganda, but she lived in East Germany and thought it was great. That's weird. But yeah, let me just show you. This is Tulsi Gabbard. This is Whoopi Goldberg and her relationship with her sit-down interview with a Ku Klux Klan white supremacist neo-Nazi guy.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm sitting here with Tom Metzger, Director of War. Until 1980 was the Grand Dragon of the KKK in California. A lot of people have said a lot of different things about you, but I have a scenario I want to put out because I think that will help me understand. Say you're going down the street in your car, a toddler, maybe 2.5 years old, toddles out, gets hit by a car speeds away. You get out, you go, and the child is black.
Yes.
What do you do?
I do what I would expect anybody would do, and that's get the kid help, medication, whatever. Under those conditions, that's exactly what I would expect anyone who is associated with me to do.
Strangely enough, that's not the answer most people would expect to hear from you, but we'll be right back.
You remember the 1990s? This was 1990s television. This is Whoopi Goldberg with the leader of White Aryan Resistance on her television program. Tom Metzger, former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, David Duke's right-hand man. Tom Metzger, look him up, right? He was the guest. Look, she showed his name there in lights. See that? Tom Metzger. Yay! Tom Metzger. I mean, you can't make this up, right? This is like, that here she is. This is her interview / date with the Grand Wizard of the Klan.
Way to go, Jer. Can you clarify what the White Aryan Resistance is? We know it is war, but what is it?
I think the simplest way to put it is that we are a separatist, racial separatist group, an association that believes in the separation of the races.
Can you believe this? I mean, she's giving a blowjob to the KKK on national television. This was on PBS, you know, and she's like, "Oh, look at you." You know, I mean, she's leaned back in her chair and she's, "Oh yeah, look at this." So tell us about the White Aryan Resistance, Mr. Metzger. But Tulsi Gabbard should go to jail, folks. Keep in mind, right? Tulsi Gabbard should go to jail for telling the truth about Biolabs. But she gives a blowjob to the Grand Wizard on national TV.
But beyond that, we believe in resisting the despotic actions of the federal government and the economic determinists, the big corporations who tend to push us all around. So we would tend to raise the view of race to somewhat of a position of a religion. Not a religion, but close. In other words, our race is our religion.
What makes you superior?
I don't think that I can determine that at all. I think nature will determine that. Nature will determine, well, has the white race got too uppity and too intellectual and off into religious cults and to where they think they don't have to compete right down on the street. They can commit suicide if they want. Nature throws up the basketball, the best race, the best man, the best woman wins. So I don't know whether we're superior at all. I hope that we are a superior race. And that's not hating everybody, it's just I love what we have produced in the world and our race has produced.
If society does not change, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, there's no doubt that this is going to break up. The United States.
Yeah. Anyhow, I'm just having a little bit of fun there with Whoopi Goldberg, and this just shows you how selective the cancel culture is, right? You know, ever since BreadTube discovered my name, it has been a fact, an undisputed fact, that I am a white supremacist. Even though, you know, my wife is not white, even though I videotaped the police beating up 2 young African-American women and got them acquitted in juvenile court in 2010. Even though, you know, I've been protesting against racism and for years, it's just a fact. I'm the Grand Wizard of the KKK. I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi. But, you know, Whoopi Goldberg, you know, she gets on TV and she sits down with the Grand Wizard, and she and the Grand Wizard there are just chilling and having a great time. And yeah, I mean, you can't make it up. You just can't make this up. And cancel culture is always selective, mind you, right? It always is selective. Certain people get targeted, certain people don't. That's how the game is played. But I just, you know, Whoopi Goldberg owes an apology to Tulsi Gabbard. And I'm not saying she's a bad person, right? I mean, it is a little weird, the inconsistency, but it's wrong. It is absolutely wrong to want people jailed because they said something that Russia might have said, especially if it's something true about Biolabs, right? You know, and she should apologize to Tulsi Gabbard. That's just just what I think is a very, very defensible position. But yeah, they went after me around this Biolabs shit as well. There was a documentary made by Thought Slime and Sophie from Mars called The Conspiracy Left. And it had a whole long section about me and how awful I am. And in that, Peter Coffin and Fox Green and myself, we did kind of a rebuttal to that film, which is still online. They've edited it heavily. They've uploaded like a new version of it that's not as bad, but we clipped the actual versions of it. So I'm gonna show you some of what we were able to talk about. But anyway, yeah, let me find the part that's yeah, here we go. This is us reacting to a smear piece on us about the Biolabs. Example that I wanted to point to of her doing that is the Biolabs, right? So let's play that, right? These Biolabs, she says this is all just an evil conspiracy theory, never happened.
For some good reasons and some bad ones, and Alex Jones and the conspiracy left all cater toward them. And to that end, Jones has been sharing a conspiracy theory popular in Russia and China that there are bioweapon development labs in Ukraine, which are funded by the West, which Putin wants to seize.
Yeah, which is actually true. There are bio labs that are engaged in gain of function. It's all completely true now, keep in mind, right? And she's saying it with this, there are bio labs in Ukraine,
and by extension, possibly because those labs are where they manufactured the coronavirus. And the conspiracy left are sharing the same theory. Maupin is sharing it. Peter Coffin is retweeting Maupin sharing it. One of the few Maupinist disciples, is sharing it. George Galloway produced a whole segment talking about it. On the American right, of course, it's much more popular to talk about the possibility of coronavirus being manufactured. But among the conspiracy left, their main focus of this story is the possibility of, and this is their term, not mine, weapons of mass destruction in Ukraine.
Yeah. So first of all, she doesn't get that the fact that Ukraine was developing biological weapons with which to attack Russia would obviously make Russia's intervention in Ukraine a lot more logical and defensible. She doesn't quite comprehend that, right?
No.
But the other thing that she doesn't do is apparently it's not only you, me, Peter, Fox, George Galloway, other people that are promoting this conspiracy theory. There are actually members of Congress and State Department employees that are promoting this conspiracy theory. Someone she forgot to attack.
Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
Now, we know what happened, and Sophie has done a great job. Vladimir Putin hired actors who looked a lot like Marco Rubio and Undersecretary Victoria Nuland. He set up a sound stage in Moscow, and they filmed the whole thing to make Americans think that the U.S. government was working with the military of Ukraine and built these biolabs, all to justify the fact that he just wants to murder Ukrainians. That's what happened. Sophie has uncovered this vast Russian plot to undermine our faith in NATO. Wow. I mean, look at the clip. It's in the clip. It's right there. Go ahead, Peter.
And then you can also see, it's very interesting what she does there. Like, the narrative before some of this stuff started to actually get proven was that there were no labs. And now the narrative, the State Department representative putting the narrative out there is saying, oh, there's labs. But the primary worry we have is that Russia might get a hold of them.
Yeah, and there's also a framing thing that she does that's really misleading too, where she says, oh, weapons of mass destruction. That was the manufactured consent for the US to go into, the Middle East. And she's saying that the Russians are now doing the same thing, where it's like, no, they didn't go in there because they were looking for weapons of mass destruction. They went in there for, to denazify and these other reasons, and then they happen to find these things. It's not like they're using that the same way that the U.S. did to manufacture consent to go into the Middle East. I mean, it's very dishonest framing here.
Right. I mean, it's like, so you have to imagine that, like in Mexico, the U.S. Imagine that Russia overthrew the government of Mexico, started arming gangs of Nazis whose mission is to kill Americans in Mexico. Started bombing and killing, people, U.S. citizens or people that were like linked to the United States in Mexico, killed 14,000 of them. And then the icing on the cake is that then Russia were setting up biological weapons labs facilities with this hostile government. At that point, the United States would have to intervene. I mean, what Russia is doing makes perfect sense. It's very logical if you put everything in context. And that's why the U.S. media doesn't want to talk about it. They just want to show you, clips of people dying, and they just want you to cry and get emotional about it. Well, we obviously are very upset about the people suffering in Ukraine, and we feel for them. But there's more going on here than just, Russia is just being aggressive. This is started by the United States and by NATO, and they have kept this going. They've been arming Nazis. They've killed 14,000 people in the eastern regions. They're now involved in this weapons program. We're saying some pretty legitimate things, but she thinks the whole thing is just completely a hoax. And if these aren't biological weapons labs, why are they also worried about the Russians getting their hands on them? Well,
because obviously it Russia bad. Like, that's really all it is.
Yeah, but anyway, so it's worth revisiting that. How, Tulsi got defamed for talking about the biolabs. I got defamed for talking about the biolabs. RT got defamed for talking about the biolabs. And the biolabs are 100% real. And they're not apologizing. It's like we have the documents now. We have the documents. We have the proof from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, as she's leaving, that the biolabs are 100% real. They are 100% real. But listen, folks, I've got a few more things I want to talk about, but I also want to answer a lot of your questions in the second half of the show. So if you've got anything to run by me, if you got a question to send me in the second half of the show, go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. You can also do super chats because we're monetized. Super chats work. Rumble rants on the Rumble. But listen, we've been doing a lot of great clips lately, just little clips of, about what CPI is all about and all of that. So I wanted to put on our latest one. This is about, what is globalism, imperialism, this system we're fighting against. So enjoy this. Okay. Hold on. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to get the file somewhere else. Tonight is a night of technical difficulties, but that's okay. That's okay. We will survive. But anyway, I have to, we're getting another version of the file, but that's how these things work. So thanks for bearing with us amid all these technical difficulties tonight. But yes, this is a video we recently did, different CPI members explaining what globalism, imperialism is and why we fight against it. So yeah, here we go. Here we go.
Globalism, imperialism, as I understand it from CPI, is a financial system that is run by Wall Street and London, where giant international corporations spread their tentacles around the world, holding back development.
You look around this country, they are literally unpaving the roads in 27 different states. Municipalities cannot maintain paved roads. They don't have enough money. They're unpaving roads all across America.
our life expectancy has gone down by 2 years. Is Iran the one doing this to us? No. This is being done by big corporations, vultures, bankers that are looting the public budget to serve an international system.
How I define globalism/imperialism is the growth while the private banks and private corporation grows and scams the regular working person in America. And it's modern time colonialism.
Globalists, elite, oligarchs, corporatists, the deep state. I mean, it's all that same class of people that are at the top, and they want to stay at the top.
They sink their fangs into Africa, they sink their fangs into Latin America, they sink their fangs into Asia, and they have U.S. military bases to accompany the corporations to extract huge profits from across the planet, while we, the American people, the American working class, American working families are left behind.
Not only are they doing something that's immoral by conquering other countries, but they're also doing it in a way that does not benefit the working people of the core empire. It only benefits this global ruling class that has hollowed out industries and has financialized everything.
Nigeria is a country in Africa with so much oil, but the people of Nigeria are in deep and utter poverty because their oil is controlled by ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Chevron, and they are prevented from building up their own economy. And there are many examples of this, and that imperialism is going around the world in degrowing countries.
Our servicemen do not want to fight. On the aircraft carriers that they have parked outside of Iran, you have thousands of American servicemen intentionally clogging the toilets and trying to flood the aircraft carrier because they know that the Iranian people are not their enemies.
And the countries that have broken free from that system, like Burkina Faso, where they are creating food sovereignty and economic independence, get demonized as juntas and authoritarian.
Iran is not the enemy, folks. Israel's the enemy. The Zionists are the enemy. Epstein elitists are the enemy.
Their system is more destructive than productive.
I really appreciate the Center for Political Innovation because we are a family. We understand that we have to encourage each other and that to stay on the revolutionary road, we also need to work on personal development.
I don't know if you've ever heard it. He used to talk about the old 1950s television show. It's The Lone Ranger. You know, the Lone Ranger, he wore a mask, he was a white dude, and then he had a Native American sidekick named Tonto. The story goes, the joke of Lenny Bruce is that the Lone Ranger and Tonto were surrounded by a group of Native Americans with their spears ready, pointed out at them, and they were facing the edge of a cliff. There was no escape. And so the Lone Ranger turned to Tonto and said, "Tonto, what are we going to do?" And Tonto said, "What do you mean we, white man?" Well, you think about that joke, I think that's what's ahead for the U.S. ruling class. Because they're looking at China rising up, and they're looking at Russia rising up, and they're looking at Venezuela and Iran, and they're turning to the American working class, and they're saying, "American working class." And I think Joe Biden's saying, "American working class, what are we going to do?" And the American working class is saying, "What do you mean we, Joe Biden? What do you mean we?"
An author of a brand new book
called Imperialism and Anti-Imperialism. And when I first started flipping through this book, what struck me wasn't necessarily that I agreed with everything in it. In fact, there's plenty of things here that I think people are going to want to challenge. But what I found interesting is that Caleb is trying to answer some really big questions that a lot of us have been wrestling with lately. And what makes the book interesting is that it's not just a collection of Caleb's thoughts on world events. Much of it is drawn from his own experiences over the years, covering international politics, organizing anti-war movements, traveling abroad, questioning U.S. government officials, speaking in countries like Iran, interacting with world leaders, including Vladimir Putin, and even having one of his articles republished in North Korea's state newspaper. Through those experiences, Caleb explores some of the biggest geopolitical questions of our time, from China and Russia to Ukraine, NATO, energy markets, sanctions, and the shifting balance of power in an increasingly multipolar world. And whether you agree with his conclusions or not, he has a very different framework for understanding what's happening in the world right now than what we hear on CNN, Fox News, or most of the mainstream press.
Yeah. No, I've been on Kim Iverson's show a number of times, and that was kind of her talking about my new book, Imperialism and Anti-Imperialism, which, I did a great segment with her promoting it. But, the reason Kim Iverson has me on a lot is because I give good interviews, and like the Trotsky and neocons interview I did with Kim Iverson. Whew, that got so much attention, so many views. I mean, the audience was blown away. There was just so many great clips from that interview, but there's been other great interviews I've done on her show. I've been on many times, and I'm getting more. Tonight I got an invite onto a major YouTube channel. Hopefully that gets scheduled for next week. I'm going on all kinds of YouTube channels. I was on Jamaro Thomas this week, and, I know what I'm talking about. That's why. I know what I'm talking about, and, I do these things, but I liked how Jake in the chat, he said, social media, what did he say? Social media isn't real, and none of the actors that are visible on social media are real. You are right, Jake. And there is a huge effort to manipulate people. And, a couple weeks ago, I think it was just like 2 weeks ago, I did a YouTube live stream where I went over the history of the Ku Klux Klan. And the Ku Klux Klan is this far-right organization. And I talked about how in the 1970s, as there was kind of a wave of far-right, racist activism in America, as kind of a blowback to the civil rights movement, mainstream media made David Duke go viral. And mainstream media made him an instant celebrity. And that was a way of manipulating the far right. There were Ku Klux Klan groups, there were racist groups in America, and David Duke was not part of any of them. But his dad was an intelligence officer, and he was somebody that they could manipulate. And this is a game that they play. And they actually did it in the 1960s, even. Noah, I was talking to Noah Shank. He made a great parallel to the Weather Underground, right? The leaders of the Weathermen terrorist group were all leaders of Students for a Democratic Society that were from millionaire families that media just made famous. Mark Rudd, if you read the autobiography of Mark Rudd, he talks about he was just a 19-year-old kid, and the New York press decided to make him the face of the protests at Columbia University. And that this is a game that they play where they pick certain activists who don't deserve it, who they feel that they can kind of manipulate and control. They know how to feed them, play into their egos and manipulate them, and they blow them up, and then they use them as kind of a weapon against the movement they supposedly represent, and they kind of engage in psyops. And that's something that, my book Khrushchevism, or that I wrote, Khrushchevism, A Study in Psychological Warfare, I talked about how one thing that mainstream media likes to do is they like to just destroy the notion of a great leader, right? And just kind of destroy, they want to destroy the superego, right? And they want to destroy any notion of looking up to somebody, et cetera. And that they play these kind of psychological games where they blow up people, make them leaders of movements, and then use them to demoralize people. And, there's all kinds of stuff. And there's another layer to this, I think, which is the phenomenon of, I guess you could call it the David Duke phenomenon, where basically to manipulate and control and monitor far-right activism in the United States in the 1970s, they made David Duke a national celebrity, and they used him to, to basically confuse and destroy and manipulate the various far-right groups that they thought they couldn't control. That's all very interesting, and it's kind of similar to what was done with the 1960s New Left and the way the Weather Underground eventually became terrorists. It's very, very interesting. So I see we're getting some super chats. I wanted to just touch on one thing. I wanted to just touch on one other thing. And thank you. I see John sent a super chat, and now we've got another one from El Sangato, and I will answer super chats in the second half of the show. We've also got buy me a coffees that have come in, but we're up to 2 super chats. So if we get 8 more, I'll play the new China song. So that'll be good. And I will answer all these super chats. But I want to just touch on this last thing. So the Center for Political Innovation, we don't call ourselves communists any longer. And that was a big decision that we made in 2024. And it was an important decision that we had to make. And it was based on a number of different things. But it's interesting because when I did an interview with the Ron Paul Institute and Liberty Report, I referred to the host, who I really respect, a very important anti-imperialist, anti-war activist, Daniel McAdams, who runs the Ron Paul Institute. I referred to him as being a libertarian, and he corrected me. He said, I no longer identify as being a libertarian. I call myself a Catholic anarchist, but I don't identify with libertarianism any longer either. It was interesting, but the political label of communist has gotten destroyed. It is certain people's private property, and those people are completely nuts, and that it confuses people. Any conversation about communism in America inevitably turns into a conversation. Any conversation about socialism or communism in America inevitably turns into a conversation about making everyone equal. And that's not the essence of what went on in the 20th century. And that's not the essence of what anti-imperialism is about. Anti-imperialism is not about making everyone equal. It's about the right of colonized and oppressed countries to have economic growth. That's the issue. And so by calling ourselves innovationists, that's a label. We're celebrating economic growth, and that imperialism is anti-growth. It is degrowing and destroying countries. And we want governments like the BRICS countries, like the Union of Sahel states, like the Islamic Republic of Iran, like Venezuela, where the state is actively cultivating economic growth. And that's the essence of what Stalin did with the 5-year plans. He was cultivating economic growth. And so pivoting toward innovationism was important. But every so often, just to kind of remind people about why we do this, because I feel like there are some people that, look, when it comes to communism in America, one of the biggest problems, some of our LA people, we had our meeting this week, and one of our LA members, great guy, shout out to you, Tim, if you're watching, great beloved guy. He said, I don't get why communists in America are so opposed to patriotism. Why? Well, and he pointed out that in the history of the Communist Party, they weren't. The Communist Party USA, they used to say communism is nothing but 20th century Americanism. They used to have a joke that the only people that knew all 4 verses of the Star-Spangled Banner were members of the Communist Party. But yet, in America right now, anyone who identifies with communism, their immediate reaction is, oh my God, I hate patriotism. Why is that? Well, that's because in America, communism is the devil. Right, especially since the Cold War, since the end of the Second World War, communism has been associated with being evil and un-American, and it's considered the antithesis of America, and so people become attracted to it on the basis of wanting to be against America, feeling alienated from American society, and it's so the last thing that anyone who is attracted to communism in America wants to, identify with is patriotism. It's crazy. But there is a minority of people like myself. I was attracted to communism because I was interested in economics. And I saw that it was a lie, this idea that socialism has just never worked anywhere. That's just bullshit. That's just not true. The idea that socialism, the Soviet Union was the world's largest, booming economy during the Great Depression. I mean, they built the world's largest hydroelectric power plant, the world's largest steel mills, and that this lie, this foundational lie of economics, that communism just never worked anywhere. Just never worked anywhere. That's just not factually accurate. China has the 2nd largest economy in the world. Libya under Gaddafi had the highest life expectancy on the African continent, and neoliberal free market capitalism in the 1990s destroyed countries. I'm interested in economics, and there are some people who may be interested in economics who might be attracted to communism because they want to talk about economics, and those people should join CPI because we're the only ones that seem to take seriously the economic question. The people that fixate on communism, usually they're attracted to being the devil. They want to be against the country they live in. They're angry. They're kind of fixated on being the enemy. They want to be in opposition. And so every so often on these streams, we'll pull up something that one of the communist groups are doing, and we'll contrast it with ourselves. And we're not cyberbullying here. I've been a victim of a lot of stupid cyberbullying where they show clips of me and then they go, oh, ha, ha, and they laugh as if that's an argument. We're not doing that here, right? We have respect for these people. They're not bad people. They're just wrong. They're just wrong. And, you know, Samsara Taylor is the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party. I actually wrote a book called Letter to Bob Avakian, to the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party, who's getting older. But Samsara Taylor is going to be their next big boss. I mean, that's pretty clear. She's going to inherit the farm from Bob. She's next in line to be the leader. Bob is at least 83 at this point. She's going to be the next leader, and she's been going around speaking about communism. And she's wrong. I mean, she's wrong on a lot of points. And so we're not picking on her. You know, we don't think she's an inferior human being. We're not bullying her. We're not canceling her. But we're going to contrast her approach with our own. I have not seen this clip yet. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. But this is Samsara Taylor addressing a question about communism and the issue of mass incarceration. And we're just going to go through it and react to it and contrast it with our own views. And then we'll do the roll call, and then I'll start answering questions. And that'll be our show for tonight. So if you got any questions, send them. And this is Samsara Taylor addressing the issue of mass incarceration and how it would be different in a socialist society.
I want to ask about incarceration. Right? I agree we live under this dictatorship now. 2.4 million people incarcerated, 7 million under state supervision, ICE, concentration camps, sprawling all over the fucking place. The highest incarceration rate in the world. What are we going to do with all of these prison structures and jails and county jails and black sites within the current borders of the U.S. after the revolution? I agree that there still should be accountability. There should be punishment, especially for the biggest fascists and war criminals and imperialists. But what would be the measure around incarceration? You know, should incarceration under socialism be used as a last resort? Is there a principle for that? I mean, I know there is a principle of no nuclear weapons in the new socialist constitution.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm just going to stop this and we'll just go along and just kind of react to it. One thing that I will say that some of the communist groups do that I actually think is a little bit unhealthy, I'll be honest, spiritually. You know, politically, you can argue about whether it's just silly or whether it might be a productive conversation, there is this kind of like, after the revolution, we're going to line people up against the wall and execute them. We're going to get our revenge, right? And that's really unhealthy. And it actually became a joke. I don't know if there was a TV show in Britain during the 1970s called Citizen Smith. And it was kind of a satire. It's about a teenage boy who's a communist. It was kind of a sitcom, right? I'll show you the theme song of it. But basically it's this teenage boy who's a communist, and it's kind of a sitcom about him, and it was kind of making fun of it. And like one of the running gags on the show is that he carries around in his shirt pocket the list of people in the town that he's going to execute after the revolution. You know, and when he gets mad at somebody, he pulls the list out and starts writing their name down on the list, like he's going to execute them after the revolution. And like there's scenes where he's like, all right, you're going to go on my list. And then his friends are like, don't do it, don't put his name on the list. It's really silly, but they're kind of laughing about this. But this is kind of an unhealthy thing that you'll hear from various communist groups. You know, after the revolution, you know, we're going to execute all the capitalists, or we're going to put on trial. It's not a healthy fantasy. And honestly, in the aftermath of the Cuban Revolution of 1959, you know, there was a lot of executions in Cuba. A lot of people from the former government got the death penalty. And I'm not saying that there weren't people, you know, who were vicious murderers. And there were plenty of people from the old regime that were vicious murderers, etc. However, at the same time, that's not remembered as a good moment in Cuba's history. People in Cuba remember that as a very painful moment. And the same in Iran. You know, after the Islamic Revolution of Iran, you know, the Shah of Iran had been a brutal U.S. dictator. There were many executions in Iran in the immediate aftermath of the Islamic Revolution. And Iranians go, that wasn't a good time in our history. That was, and revenge, and that this is not something we should be celebrating and romanticizing. And the way that I see DSA, DSA is a very, very evil organization. And I went to a DSA meeting at one point in New York City, and I saw a couple people, and they had hanging around their necks guillotines, little guillotine necklaces. And I thought, that's sick. That's sick. That's spiritually unsound, right? And that we're not trying to change the world so that we can punish the people who had it too good under this system or whatever. That's just not a healthy spiritual way of doing things. I understand that people want compensation, and people want to be want justice, and people feel that they've been wronged. And I'm not saying that people don't have a right to feel that way, but you don't want to fixate on the revenge thing. And that is kind of a weird stereotype about communists. That's the point I was making about Citizen Smith, the show in Britain where, putting it on the list, and, the communists all have a list of people they're going to line up against the wall. And, Chris Matthews had his meltdown against Bernie Sanders when he said, oh, there would have been executions in Central Park. I would have been shot. We don't want to, it's really not a good thing, right? That whole communists are going to, when they take power, they're going to line up all these people and kill them. It's really spiritually unhealthy. It really is. But anyway, let's see how Sincera answers it.
And the current Constitution does have an 8th Amendment that prohibits torture, although they violate all the time. So is there something more like substantive, not just procedural, but substantive that you can think about or speak to, Sincera, around incarceration, the limits, and how the state should exercise restraints in the new communist vision under socialism with regards to really incapacitating people and locking them up for some amount of time?
Well, okay. Before she answers, I want to say one thing. You ever see that episode of Seinfeld, the communist episode? Go and look it up. I think it's called The Race, but it's an episode of Seinfeld where Elaine starts dating a communist. And, they have like silly conversations like, will we be able to have delis under communism? And then he says, of course, you just can't have different classes for the meat. It's just kind of silly. And that there is this kind of like, after the revolution, we're going to blank, 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 right? There's an old cliche, right? They tell the story of the communist agitator. This was an old joke from the 1930s. The communist agitator is on his soapbox, and he's preaching to the masses, and he says, after the revolution, we will eat strawberries and cream every day, and then someone in the audience shouts, but what if I don't like strawberries and cream? And he says, after the revolution, you will like strawberries and cream. It's it's like that, right? And that, this group in particular, the RCP, one of the things, they've already published the Constitution for the new socialist America. And on the one hand, I appreciate having the vision, but at the same time, there's, it's like the whole making the revolution thing they're not so good at. But after the revolution, they've got it all set. They've even got the Constitution written. It's the whole making the revolution part they're still working on. And that the whole point is that revolutions don't emerge out of people's heads. They emerge as a result of actual conditions, right? And that it's not going to be that someone just draws up the perfect blueprint and creates the society. It's going to be that a movement emerges that wants specific things. And that movement, in the process of building up and struggling and organizing, will develop the new structures. And that's the whole point. And when I debated Destiny Stephen Bennell, that was one of the problems. He kept demanding I draw up a perfect blueprint. And I said, we have our 4-point economic plan, but we don't have a perfect blueprint because it's going to be created by the masses, by the struggle, right? And that's not a very scientific way, I guess you could say. That's the way Marxists would say it, a scientific way of understanding revolutions. The Bolsheviks didn't draw up a blueprint for the Soviet Union before the Soviet Union. They had their platform, which was calling for nationalization of banks, separation of church and state, ending involvement in World War I. And the slogan that their platform was based on was peace, land, and bread. But it was a transitional program, right? And that you develop a transitional program of things that people want and will fight for, that you demand, and that you build a movement demanding things that are possible under the system, that the system refuses to do, right? That the power structure won't allow, that people can really see. And our 4-point plan these are all things that should be able to happen. We should be able to hire all the unemployed and rebuild America, right? Our government should do that. We spend millions on wars. Why not spend millions to hire the unemployed and put them to work rebuilding America? Why not create a national bank? Why not put our oil and our gas and our coal and timber under public ownership? Why not enact an economic bill of rights? These are 4 things that could be done, but they won't be done because our government is run by a bunch of billionaire bankers and monopolies. So we want to build a mass movement demanding these things. And in the process of doing these things, we will come into confrontation with the power structure and we'll have to build a movement. And that's how revolutions tend to happen. They don't happen by someone drawing up the ideal blueprint of what the socialist society is going to look like and showing it to people and people going, oh, that's nice. And we'll do it. That's what Frederick Engels, he wrote his very important book, Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, making this argument that you don't create a revolution. Society doesn't change by just somebody having an idea. It changes by different mass movements and forces coming into collision with the power structure and the breakdown of the old system. So we need to get that out of the way at first. So anyway, we'll get to her answer.
We are 4.5% of world population. U.S. inmate population is 25% of inmate population. It's unbelievable. As long as this capitalist system, the way it is going on, there is no solution for it. Its system is based on punitive, not unity, not lead mainly low-income people, right? Black, Latino, and if you are white but grew up in foster kids, there you go. That's where you go. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oops, sorry. So I think both of them spoke powerfully to the criminality of the so-called justice system under this system. Mass incarceration, brutal conditions. I mean, the prisons in this country are horrific. And so are the detention centers. And they have nothing to do with rehabilitation. They are all about containing and degrading and breaking whole sections of the population that they see as discardable, useless, dangerous. With a new state power, and it's actually, frankly...
Well, first of all, let's just get this out there. It's also about making profits, right? And this is something that takes place in the breakdown of capitalism, which is that in order to stabilize the system, they create a slave labor underclass. Part of the reason we have mass incarceration in America on the scale that we do is that that corporations can pay prisoners to do the jobs that law-abiding citizens on the outside used to do, and pay them pennies an hour to do it. I mean, a lot of call centers are in jails, right? And if they were hiring people outside of jail, they'd have to pay them at least minimum wage, probably some commission to do it. But in a call center, in a jail, in a prison, prison call center, you can pay the people 2 cents an hour, and there's no labor protection, and you can pay them almost nothing. And that, in our prisons, there's prisoners who build, military airplanes for Boeing in the prisons, right? And that prison labor is a stimulus. And this is what the Nazis did. This is how the Nazis kind of stabilized capitalism in Germany. So they created a slave labor underclass. And as capitalism breaks down due to a crisis of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit, it becomes desperate. It needs to make profit, but the rate of profit they're making on each item goes down because of technology. This is all the tendency of the falling rate of profits. This is the breakdown of capitalism. And they drive for war around the world to conquer new markets, and they create a slave labor underclass and a low-wage police state at home. This is the breakdown of capitalism. This is something we've talked about. And it's not just that it's wrong and it's inhuman. It's that it's driven by economics. This is capitalism in a decay. This is degrowth. They're trying to save the system with degrowth. And so by creating a slave labor underclass, right? And eventually, they have the vision of, we'll live in a pod and eat bugs and be happy about it. Well, prisoners don't live in a pod. They live in a cell. They don't eat bugs, but they eat food that's really not fit for human consumption. I mean, if you talk to anyone who's been in prison, the food that prisoners are given is one of the crimes. I mean, they don't get decent food to eat. And they're living a semi-human existence, right? And that's part of capitalism trying to adjust to the economic crisis, creating a slave labor underclass. So there's an economic reason for it, rooted in the problem of value crisis or overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And she doesn't get into that because the RCP doesn't really talk about economics. It's just kind of, the state is bad and when we come to power. Anyway, let her answer.
Before I go there, part of the reason we need a revolution, one of the main reasons, it's not the only, but it would be a reason enough by itself, is the brutal incarceration. I mean, that would be a reason to overthrow the system if it did nothing else wrong. And so we do need a revolution to deal with that. But with the new state power, we are still going to have police. We're still going to have prisons. We're going to dismantle their police. We're not going to have their institutions, but you still will need arms of enforcement. You'll need it because why? Because A, you have overthrown exploiters and oppressors who are going to be wanting to come back and gear things back up towards capitalism. Just like after the Civil War, you had the overthrown slave owners who, once they had the chance, formed up with the KKK and came through and re-enslaved black people through terror. So you have to defend and enforce against that. You need laws against that. But you also have the fact that people are shaped as they were shaped under the system of capitalism. You have a lot of people who have a criminal mentality. You have a lot of people, a lot of men who've been conditioned to brutalize, degrade, and rape women. They've been socialized that way. This is thick in this society. You have a lot of people who are still going to have attitudes where they violate the rights of each other. And you're going to need laws and enforcement to protect people, to protect the new society, to protect people from violations of their rights by other people, and to protect people from violation of their rights by the state.
Yeah, and that's, this is Leninism. This is the state and revolution. This is dictatorship of the proletariat, the Marxist concept. And that ultimately, right, crime is rooted in scarcity. The fact that, that there is scarcity in society, there's not enough to go around. Some will have and some will have not. And it's a fight, right? And the state protects the private property of some and all of that. And ultimately, communism or socialism, as Marx understood it, was centralizing the means of production in the hands of a state that represents the overall population so that the economy could be rationally organized and the abundance could expand, right? And you wouldn't have a problem of people being homeless because there are too many houses anymore. And you wouldn't have a problem of people being hungry because there is too much food. And abundance would no longer lead to poverty. You'd centralize production, and then the amount of wealth in society would greatly expand. Human innovation and human creativity would take off, no longer suffering under what they call the artificial restraints of the irrational profit motive. And so gradually, with a rationally organized, centrally planned economy, we could move toward a society where there is no need for a state, where people can just take what they need because there's enough for everybody, from each according to his own ability and to each according to his needs, right? And that's what Marx is talking about if you read Critique of the Goethe Program. Again, it's an economic question. The reason that we have crime and the reason that we have, a lot of the ugly things in society is because of scarcity. Scarcity will still exist to some degree or other, even after you have a government that represents the population overall, even after you centralize the means of production. But you have a state that is moving toward abundance because they centrally plan the economy, and gradually that will fade away. And that's the Marxist concept of dictatorship of the proletariat. And what she's saying here is, again, a watered down version that kind of misses the economic components. But yes, obviously what she's saying is pretty basic, that the idea is that people don't, rapists and murderers and axe murderers and child molesters and, nasty people are still going to be around and they have to be dealt with. And they don't just magically go away because the state changes hands, right? And that also, just like under this system, they have a political police that suppresses those that would conspire to overthrow this system, that there's going to be a political police to suppress those who would conspire to bring the imperialists back to power, right? This is the Leninist concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat. And again, they're missing the point about abundance creating poverty under capitalism and centralization of the means of production, and the higher stage of communism being based on vast abundance, but it's still the same concept.
Seem like a contradiction. One of the things that's going to happen is we are going to have police forces, we will have prisons, but we are going to have probably, I think certainly the most robust legal system in this Constitution and this is a new feature, it's part of the new communism that Bob Avakian has written. Dictatorship can be arbitrary. It can be lawless. We've seen that around the world. Bob Avakian has made clear this is everybody in this new society, in the dictatorship of the proletariat as he has re-envisioned it, is beholden to the laws, including the party, the Revolutionary Communist Party, is beholden to the laws of the Constitution. And no one will have their rights deprived from them without being put on trial and having to have that proven.
Now, this is interesting. Now, they didn't used to always talk this way. I mean, I've been listening to the RCP for years. They didn't always used to talk this way. And this is a little bit strange because they're a sectarian, anti-revisionist, like ultra-Maoist current. So they uphold Stalin, they uphold Mao. And, you know, it's pretty clear in Mao's China, plenty of people were thrown in jail without due process. And in Stalin's Russia, plenty of people were thrown in jail without due process. And they uphold that. But yet they're kind of reassuring everybody that they won't do that. And they're kind of, you know, I mean, they're saying that like rule of law will be upheld, and that, you know, rule of law is not upheld in our society. In theory, you have the right to a lawyer. In theory, you have the right to due process, but all the people in Guantanamo don't have that. And the president can kill people with drones. They get no hearing, no procedure, whatever. The president just puts your name on a list. Even if you're a U.S. citizen, Obama did it to a U.S. citizen. Put your name on the list, kaboom, you're dead with a drone. That's not due process. So, you know, they're kind of defending the notion of due process under the law, which is a good thing. And they're kind of trying to distance themselves from Stalin and Mao. They're kind of pandering to liberals and liberal opposition and liberal criticism of Stalin's Russia and Mao's China a little bit, which is interesting. But I mean, when it really gets down to it, no society really practices that. And that's the point, right? That as much as America professes that and does have it for some people and at some of the time, at the same time, I mean, the people on the drones list or the people in Guantanamo Bay, there's plenty of examples of how due process of law, et cetera, doesn't exist in our society as it is now. So there you go.
There's no arbitrary detention. There's no arbitrary imprisonment. There's no arbitrary taking away of people's rights. You have a trial. You have to prove that they violated the law. And not the way that it is under this society where you have a trial, but your lawyer is not funded. They're overworked. They have 30 cases and they're trying to get you to cop a plea unless you have a lot of money. And the state has all these resources to grind you down. And I don't know if it's 80% or 90% of the convictions are from people who cop pleas because they just don't have the wherewithal to mount a defense. No, and this Constitution is very heavy. Bob Avakian has said that everybody in the defense will have resources funded by the state at least equal to those of the prosecution. That's written into the Constitution. So you have a robust defense. Somebody accuses you, you have a robust defense, and you don't have your rights taken away unless that is proven in a court of law. Further, the laws that are enforced, yes, there's things, if there's small crimes, nonviolent crimes, they're treated one way. If they're violent and aggressive crimes, then they're treated in a different way. But you have the right to do many things that are short of violating other people's rights and causing harm. You have the right, including the protected right, to advocate against the new society. You can't get locked up for what you say, even if you say, we want to overthrow the social.
Again, I'm just hearing a lot of kind of pandering to the assumptions that Stalin's Russia and Mao's China were evil, authoritarian hellholes, and assuring everybody that's not what you want, while at the same time upholding them. If you're going to play this game, why not just be a Trotskyist and say, "Oh, that wasn't real socialism"? This is a little bit strange, and I want there to be due process of law, and I want people to have their civil liberties, but I understand that's based on the conditions of society, that nobody anywhere in the world was talking about freedom of speech or freedom of religion until like the 1400s, and that wasn't because people were evil until then. It was just based on development, and that if they declare war, all of our free speech goes away, and that due process can vanish if Congress declares war and if society is in a state of emergency. So again, she's not really giving a material understanding of where the notion of human rights and freedoms came from. She's just kind of pandering to the notion that it's good, which is a very liberal Western notion that like good countries have freedom, and she's reassuring everyone that we will have such freedoms in the society. We'll adhere to Western standards of freedom, and it's kind of being done, you know, in a way to try and distance herself from societies that her organization does uphold. They don't defend Cuba, they don't defend North Korea or any of the current communist governments, but they do at least say, you know, Stalin's Russia and Mao's China were socialist. But then there's this kind of desperate attempt to kind of distance from them and not explain why those societies were the way they are.
Socialist republic. If you start blowing things up or organizing insurrection, then you'll be put on trial. And if we can prove that you violated the law and tried to actually carry out acts of insurrection, you can be deprived of your rights. But that has to be proven in court. And again, you get the defense, as much resource for your defense as we get for the prosecution. You know, but you get to advocate for it. You just don't get to act on it in that kind of violent way. Then finally, in terms of a standard. So I'm trying to explain, one, that the why we need courts, prisons, laws, and police. But two, the fact that everybody will have a robust defense and a real rigorous protection by law in a way that never happens under this society and in a way that's very important. And third, where people's liberties are taken away, this will not be because we're trying to punish people. This is not a matter of vindictiveness. You've done wrong, we're going to get you back. In fact, a big part of the new communism is rupturing with revenge. The point is not you've made us suffer, we're going to make you suffer. The point is to get to a world where people are not pit against each other and where humanity and people are protected from the predation, the predatory behavior of exploiters, but also other people who might not have the right outlook, who might.
Yeah, and that's healthy. You know, I will recommend, you know, and I'm sure that she would approve of this book. I don't know if she knows about it, but she probably does. There's a book, Prisoners of Revolution. And it was written by a guy who was you know, in prison in Mao's China. And you can get the whole PDF of the book, of the book. This guy was, you know, arrested for being a U.S. spy in Mao's China, he actually felt that the experience was meaningful and that the focus in the prison was on rehabilitation and thought reform, and he underwent it. And I actually wish I could pull up that guy's, it's hard to find this book, but the whole PDF is, the whole PDF is online, and you can read about it. It's actually quite interesting. If I can pull it up, it's actually a very, very interesting book. Is this the right book? I want to make sure I give the right book. I think this is the right one. American Prisoners of the Revolution. Is that the name of it? I want to give the link. It's actually a very interesting book. This guy's memoir of being a prisoner in Mao's China as an American spy and what that was like. American Prisoner, Mao's China. Yeah, let me find that book. I actually enjoyed reading it. Thought reform. I've referenced it on streams here before, and for some reason it's not coming up. What is the name of this book? American Prisoners of the Thought Reform, China. Trying to find the name of this book because it's actually it's an obscure book now, but it's you can find PDFs of it and stuff. Let me try to find it. What is the name of that book? I read it and I actually really did enjoy it. Prisoner of the Revolution, Prisoners of the Revolution. Let me find the book. I would like to find that book and reference it because it's quite interesting. And if I could just, Prisoner of Revolution, maybe. Yes, here it is. Okay, Sidney Rotenberg, I believe is the name, right? Is that his name? Let me pull it up. I think this is the book. Okay, I think I found it here. Yeah, Sidney Rittenberg, Prisoner. I think this is it. Prisoner. Is this? Yeah, Sidney Rotenberg PDF. Right, Sidney Rittenberg. Is that who it was or no? Okay, maybe I had that wrong. Okay, was it? No, maybe I had it wrong. Okay, maybe it wasn't Sidney Rittenberg. Yeah, Prisoners of Revolution. Right, prisoner. What? Yeah. Well, anyhow, Prisoner of Revolution. Hmm. Hmm. No, it wasn't Sidney Rittenberg. That's just another American guy who stayed behind. Well, if I could find the name of this book, Yeah, this is odd. Yeah, if I could find. Okay. All right. Well, let's just continue. We'll just continue. Anyhow.
To prey on people, or might just be unwell. And so when people's liberties are taken away, it's taken away because that's necessary to protect the well-being of society, not out of punishment and vindictiveness. And the orientation is to enable people to transform, to learn and transform and come back and join society in a productive way, if that is at all possible. So this has gone into more fully in this, and there's a tremendous, I don't know if we have that blue pamphlet, but Bob Avakian, maybe you could hold it up, Chantel. Bob Avakian has done tremendous work on laws, constitutions, and rights, and he's studied in writing this constitution, the constitutions of bourgeois revolution, of bourgeois societies, capitalist societies, all kinds of writings and theories on the rule of law that he's gone deeply into, and why you cannot have a just society without a due process before your rights are taken away, and you can't have due process without the presumption of innocence. And this is protected and made real in a way that is so profound and so essential to the new society. So I think it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. We could get more into it as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things on this. One really profound manifestation of the last point that Sansaro is making about how the justice system will not be about punishing people is Bob Avakian has actually said that in the new socialist society, the prisons that will still exist, the standard of living in these prisons will be the same or greater than in the rest of society as a whole.
How can you say that? Like, I'm sorry. They're just... this is just a lot of when we come to power, this is a lot of utopianism. The name of the book, though, if you really want to read an interesting book by an American who did go to prison in Mao's China, the name of the book is, I found it, it's Prisoners of Liberation by Alan Rickett. Alan Rickett is the guy who wrote it. It's called Prisoners of Liberation. And I'll put the image on the screen, and the PDF is fully available online. So let me just, I'll put it, it's called Prisoners of Liberation. And that does, Alan Rickett's Prisoners of Liberation is the whole PDF is available online. And you can read all about it. Prisoner of Liberation, 4 years in a Chinese communist prison by Alan Rickett. And that's the name of the book. I'm putting the PDF in the chat. If you want to read a book about how the Chinese communist prison system in the 1950s focused on rehabilitation and thought reform. A lot has been written about communist brainwashing and communist mind control and all of that. And, it is actually interesting to read Alan Rickett talk about how, as an American spy, he was arrested and he actually feels that in his prison, term, he learned a lot in the Chinese prison. He learned a lot about politics and stuff. Prisoners of Liberation by Alan Rickett. Alan and Adele Rickett. Adele Rickett is his wife. Yeah, that's the PDF if you want to read it all. It's quite interesting. I would recommend that. But anyway, we'll let them continue, and then we'll go to start answering people's questions.
This is like impossible to imagine. In this society, everyone you grow up learning, you go to prison, you're going to suffer. That's the whole point of it. They're going to make you pay. They're going to make you suffer, right? In the new socialist system, as Sansar was saying, the point is you will still need some prisons to separate people from society and set standards about what behavior and conduct is allowed, but it's not to actually punish people and make them suffer.
Yeah, how are you going to do that? Right. This is starting to, get, I don't know. This is just, maybe, come the revolution, we'll all have strawberries and cream. This is just kind of, if we came to power and we had absolute control and there was no restrictions, this is getting silly.
Have actually good conditions in these prisons. I wanted to say one other thing, though, which is to the brother in the blue shirt who is raising the question of 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. I'm sorry. First of all, how did we get here? How do we get to that situation? In the 60s and 70s, the U.S. had, maybe 200, 300,000 people in prison, right? And then all through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, it just skyrocketed to the point where now we have almost 2.5 million people in prison.
Yeah, well, the U.S. economy broke down. That's what happened. And they needed to, give them hugs and kisses. Sounds like a good country. Exactly. Yeah, they're being a little bit idealistic. But no, what happened is, starting in the 1970s, the U.S. economy broke down, and mass incarceration was a fascist method of trying to reboot the economy with degrowth, creating a slave labor underclass.
Why did this happen? You had a whole section of society that, particularly as the factory jobs were automated and were moved to other countries where they could pay people even less, lost their jobs. And of course, in America, because of how racist this country has been since day one, it was black people are the last hired and the first fired. And so you had you also had, a whole wave of, black liberation struggles and people rising up in the 60s and early 70s. And so you had a whole population in this country that the government had hated and feared because of the revolutionary potential that they showed in the 1960s. And you had a whole section of the population that was denied decent employment, that was locked out of the formal economy.
Yeah, he's not wrong in anything he's saying here. This is all true. In Detroit, the factories left Detroit before anywhere else because Detroit was an overwhelmingly black city, and the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement and the League of Revolutionary Black Workers had a lot of influence and enabled the mayor of Detroit, who was elected, was a friend of the new communist movement. And Coleman Young was, someone who'd been in the Communist Party's USA at one point, or was like a fellow traveler of it, had represented them in court and such. And, and Detroit lost its factories before everywhere else because it was viewed as a radical center. And that that in some ways you could argue this was a response to the revolutionary upsurge of black activism in the 1970s, the new communist movement. He's not wrong. But also automation, which leads to a falling rate of profit. And of course, the war on drugs was the propaganda used to justify it. But they were creating a slave labor underclass as a way of trying to stabilize the system.
And then you had replacing that, you had drugs, you had gangs filling that, you had the informal economy of people, hustling just to survive. And the only answer that this system could come up, to deal with that situation is prisons. Lock them up, contain them, violently contain people, right? And so how would we deal with this in a new socialist system? Number one, you're going to have a process that's laid out in this document for actually rehabilitating the millions of people who were, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to be immediately let out of prison, but there are so many people locked up in prison right now on petty ass. There are people doing life for 3 strikes for marijuana and other petty drug charges. There's going to be a process, and even the people who've done more serious crimes, there's going to be a process for actually rehabilitating people and releasing a tremendous number of people who've been incarcerated because of the conditions of the current system, And so when we have a new system, there will be that rehabilitation, but there will also be a process. The main thing is that we're overcoming the conditions that have led people to fuck each other over, have led people to commit crimes against each other. One of the first things Sansara said in the section when she was talking about imagine a new system, one of the first points she made is imagine everyone was guaranteed good employment. Right there, you've ended the basis for a lot of the crimes that are committed and the culture of the gang culture and everything that arises. If everyone is guaranteed a decent job, and you're able to get beyond a situation where people are pitted against each other in the rat race to survive and committing crimes against each other. So I think there is, we will still, into the period of socialism, need some prisons and jails for the reasons Sansara said, but there is a basis fairly quickly to actually release a lot of people and not have a situation where it's 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners.
Yeah, so I agree with most of what was said there, and I mean, maybe this wasn't the best clip to contrast my views. The only difference is that I would emphasize economics, right? And that, it's not just like, the government was mad that there was a civil rights movement, so it took revenge on the black people. I know that's not what they said, but, that this is related to the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And that's what I keep coming back to, the problem of overproduction, these basic Marxist concepts that we live in a highly irrational system where abundance creates poverty. The coal miner's riddle, right? The little boy says to his father, "Why is it so cold?" Father says, "Because I can't afford any coal to heat the stove." And the little boy says, "Why can't you afford any coal to heat the stove?" He says, "Because I lost my job at the coal mine." He says, "Why did you lose your job at the coal mine?" He says, "Because there is too much coal." And that capitalism is constantly creating abundance and reducing the amount of human labor power that is necessary to create products. And in the process, abundance creates poverty, and that the rate of profit goes down. I'll show the socialist math video. We need to get back to this understanding, the economic understanding. The problem with capitalism is it can't handle abundance. That human creativity and human brilliance has outstripped the narrow limits of a system where profits are in command. We need central planning, and that central planning can create abundance, and abundance can create a wealthy society. I guess what I would say in our system right now, they want people in jail because people in jail can do cheap labor. People in jail aren't out competing for jobs. It's an economic stabilization mechanism. It's a subsidy to big corporations. We want to create a society that's not the case, where we want people living out in society, living productive lives, being creative, and we see human beings as a source of wealth. We don't see human beings as something we need to get rid of, possibly by locking them in jail, right? The relationship to human beings must change. We have a decaying capitalist system that's trying to rescue itself with Malthusian and fascist degrowth economics. What we need is a state that invests in human labor power and centrally plans the economy to overcome the irrationality of profits in command so that human labor power and abundance can be unleashed. So I'll just show the socialist math video, then we'll do the roll call, and then I'll start answering questions. So send in any questions you got. Here we go.
Explain what needs to be explained, what used to be considered Marxism 101, about why it is that our Western capitalist economy is crashing and burning. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do some math. And I hate math. You know why I hate math? Because I grew up in America. I went to public school in the United States of America. So I am going to, at risk of embarrassing myself, because math was never my best subject, I am going to do some mathematics here on the board for you to explain the problem.
We very much enjoyed Caleb's speech.
So if you are creating a product, right? If you're a factory owner, you're making a product, you are going to need the material through which that product is made, the manufacturing materials. So that'll be A.
The simple equation you put forward to explain the crisis of overproduction and the falling rate of profit.
And you're probably going to need to transport the product to where it's sold. That's B.
It broke down where your money goes.
You're also going to have to pay your labor costs. Labor costs are represented by C.
Explanations of those concepts that people are able to understand.
Then when consumers purchase the product, they're going to pay a final price. And that final price is D. However, there's a problem with that.
I like the fact that he framed it that way to make it very clear.
Which is that the capitalist can't change how much A costs. He can't change how much B costs. So the profit of the capitalist can only be extracted from the value put into it by the worker. And this is the basis of Marxism, the understanding of surplus value.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere. I've never been able to explain it that simply.
So C, the labor value, is divided. You have C1, which is what the worker actually gets paid. And then you have C2, which is the profit that the capitalist makes. And it all adds up to D, which is the final cost of the product. Now, the way people in the United States who talk about Marxism generally talk about this is they say, well, this is unfair. They say the worker is not getting paid the full value of his labor. But they're missing one of the most important points, which is not just that it's unfair and then people argue, well, what about the employer? He put up the money, doesn't he deserve to be? That's all a distraction. Because the important thing to understand is this. C1 is always going to be less than D. The wages paid out to the worker are never enough to buy back the product that he produces. There is always more products created than there are wages paid out to the worker. And this is the built-in problem of capitalism, the problem of overproduction. And it is always there in the capitalist economy. It never goes away. And they have invented all kinds of crazy mechanisms to try and deal with the problem of overproduction. Part of the reason that the US government has purchased billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese only to bury it in a cave in Springfield, Missouri, is to deal with this problem. It is an ongoing present problem, and it's a problem acknowledged by most capitalist economists. John Maynard Keynes said the problem was underconsumption rather than overproduction, but he was pointing to the same problem. The military-industrial complex in the United States is an effort to deal with this problem, to keep spending going. There's all kinds of mechanisms that they've invented to try and resolve this problem, but it gets worse. What is the capitalist always trying to do? He wants to maximize the amount of profit he makes. And one of the main ways they do that is with what's called labor-saving technology. Get rid of workers and replace workers with machines. As they eliminate workers from the process of production, as there's fewer and fewer workers involved, as machines take the place of workers, the role of C in production decreases. There's a little bit of a problem with that. As C goes down, C2 also goes down, right? As C decreases, C2 also decreases. And as the role of the worker in production is reduced, the rate of profit that the capitalist makes goes down. And this is called the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Only human labor creates value. And this is something that Adam Smith acknowledged. This is something some of the popes even acknowledge. Human labor creates all value. And so when you reduce the role of human labor in production, the amount of value created decreases, and the ability of the capitalist to extract surplus value also decreases. So this causes the capitalist to have to churn out even more products because he's making less and less of a profit on the overall product. He's making less and less of a percentage, so he has to churn them out. So this problem of the worker never being able to buy back what he produces and more products being created than are necessary, this problem becomes exacerbated. And this points to what is understood to be the deeply irrational nature of the capitalist system.
Yep. Socialist math. So simple. All right, folks. Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. We're going to do our roll call, and then I'll start answering people's questions. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. We got Brian in Dayton, Ohio. Penny in Minnesota. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Jenny in Cincinnati. Names and locations. Names and locations. We got Ryan in Kansas City. Cameron in New Hampshire. Good to see you. We got Toronto. Patricia in Liverpool, UK. Yusuf in Durham, North Carolina. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Stars. Yay. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us? Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us? I always like to do this to show people that we are a community, so that, Samuel from the Russian Far East. God bless you. Well, thank you, Samuel. I'm glad that you enjoyed that, and I'm glad you're here. Must be confusing to watch American communists. That's one thing. Whenever I go to other countries, people say American communists are some of the weirdest people. They are. Good to see you, Los Angeles. Bradley Briggs. Good to see you. I am pro human labor. Me too. Me too. Jane in New Zealand. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you, Jane. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? I should be an auctioneer. I should be an auctioneer, as they say. Anybody else with us? Names and locations. Right? Yeah. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us? Anybody else? Anybody else? Names and locations. All right. Well, I'm going to start answering people's questions now. Just a reminder that we can answer questions via, super chats. We got 3 super chats that have come in. We also can do Buy Me a Coffee. I saw there's another Buy Me a Coffee question. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. That's a great way to send your questions as well. We also do Rumble rants, which no one's done any Rumble rants, which is fine. So we're going to start answering people's questions. I do want to give you all a chance to send any more questions that you've got. So, John in Chicago. Very good. So I am going to put on some music. Briggy in PA. Nice shirt. Yeah. Hawaiian shirt. It's funny. I feel like I wear the same shirts on these streams. I have more shirts, but I either wear them with suits and ties or but for some reason I wear this shirt on streams a lot. But anyway, I'm going to put on a song to give you all a chance to, send any questions you've got. I'm going to put on a song. And then after that, I will answer people's questions. So yeah, what song am I going to put on? I'm going to put on a song. And what song should I put on? I think I'm going to put on We Sing for the Future. Wait, no, I don't. Okay, I'm not going to put on. I'm going to put on the 5-year plans song from China. We're talking about 5-year plans in a state that oversees growth. China has 5-year economic plans, and the state plans out the economy to make sure there's growth. And this is a song they released 5 or 6 years ago. They released it because this is about their 13th 5-year plan, and they actually have a 14th 5-year plan now. But this is a song about 5-year economic plans, which is the essence of what socialism is: the state controlling the means of production and making sure there's growth, centralizing the instruments of production. So we're going to put on China's 5-year plan song. And then I will answer people's questions after that. So send some questions, buy me a coffee, Rumble rants, or super chats after the song. I will then start answering questions. So here we go.
Hey, have you guys heard what's going on in China?
President Xi Jinping's new style?
Yes, and there's more.
The Shisanu. The what?
China's 13th 5-year plan. Yeah, the Shisanu.
Oh.
Every 5 years in China, man, they make a new development plan. The time has come for number 13. Shisanu, that's what it means.
It's a huge deal. Like how huge?
Huge.
Like China huge?
Yeah, China huge.
Oh, that's really big.
If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu. The Shisanu.
The Shisanu what?
The Shisanu.
But who makes all the plans?
There's government ministers and think tank minds and party leadership contributing fines. There's doctors, bankers, and farmers too, and even engineers who deal with poo.
Ew, did I hear that right?
Yeah, it's true. Chorus.
If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu. The Shisanu.
The Shisanu what?
The Shisanu.
But how do they make all the plans?
First there's research, views collected, then discussion and views projected. Reports get written and passed around. Then there's actually more research and more discussion and more research and more discussion. Like at every level. Over and over, like through hundreds of rounds. It's
okay, we got it. Hundreds of rounds. Oh my god.
Crazy, right? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu. The Shisanu.
The Shisan what?
The Shisanu.
But it's not over yet. When the plan comes out, the work's not done. In fact, it's really just begun. Because every province, county, city too have got to figure out what they're gonna do. Whoa.
That's a lot to do.
I know.
Hey, what's it called again?
The Shisanu. If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu. The Shisanu.
The Shisan what?
The Shisanu.
Then the plans keep getting even better. As the plan goes down from high to low, the government's experience continues to grow. They have to work hard and deliver rains, because a billion lives are all at stake.
like every 赵钱孙李周吴郑王冯钱楚魏蒋沈
Chorus! If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu. The Shisanu. Everybody's talking about the Shisanu.
So that's it.
That's it? Yeah, now it's time to get ready for the 14th 5-year plan. What?
Yeah, the Shisu.
The Shisu what?
Yeah, that's fun stuff. The 5-year plan song. All right, so now we're going to start answering people's questions. So we'll go to Buy Me a Coffee. Oh, we got some more questions that have come in. This is great. A lot of people are asking questions. So Buy Me a Coffee. All right. The first question we've got, right? We got MTG, the parliamentarian. We already did that. The Massey. All right. Okay. So those are from the last time. All right. So next, Christine sent the first question, and she said, here's $5 for the Juche session listen. To be honest, and always seek the truth as a priority, even if that would cause some people to go through the stages of grieving as they acknowledge that the first government to approach being controlled by trillionaires is the greatest mass murderer on the earth, the USA. I don't recall hearing of post-World War II Germans making a great spectacle while praising the greatness at the 1952 Olympics, but I can too easily imagine the aggressive barking of recent chants for the USA from across the country most responsible for decapitating innocent children. It's difficult to be surrounded by 50 shades of optimistic lies for exceptionalism with people patting themselves on the back as if that's a light stretch of modesty and not the self-congratulatory madness of blood-soaked national pride. The national and international perception of the USA will not be able to remain so delusional. Names and locations expatriate in limbo. Every foreign country I've ever lived in has treated me better than the USA in some ways. Of course, I would have gotten much better pay and benefits for preparing to kill more directly for the U.S. military than serving my country via the soft power color revolutions for the U.S. NATO wars, from the Soros Foundation educational materials of the Peace Corps. Since I never have a good service without the following advanced mature expertise of the country nationals, wasn't able to use and develop many lasting friendship from the soft power U.S. Peace Corps liberal war, confidently waving Ukrainian flags. Now, the American Zionists have caused me to, the last 2 years, lots of lost work and pay. These experiences don't help me repatriate to the U.S., the country that has treated me worse than others, both emotionally and economically. I don't have a stable location, lifestyle, or trust and patience to deal with the headquarters for lies and murder. It was never welcoming and dangerous Midwest community down to the 1980s high school cheers and T-shirt sales for the first Iraq War. War porn is encouraging Americans in secondary school as an icebreaker for military recruitment. CNN is the most popular war media. This is a long one. Used to prep kids for war. Teachers have freedom to advocate for genocide, but they'll be fired as a menace to society if they name support for the first Christian commandment. The U.S. Embassy doesn't allow poor foreigners to get visas. Foreigners need to prove basic wealth to get into the U.S. visa. More immigrants believing the lies of American wealth and greatness choose to fight to live in the USA. No diaspora group remains culturally connected at its birth. No expatriate has great community connections with the nation they left. A minimum of 4 years average is required to build community connections. That's a long question, Christine, but you're pointing to a lot of true things about U.S. society. And you are somebody who's expatriated, and you're disgusted with the militarism of U.S. society. You're disgusted with the way that it seems like a lot of Americans are blindly patriotic while their country bombs and kills people around the world. A lot of what you're saying is true, but at the same time, I believe that we have a right to claim the good parts of American history. We have a right to say that while all these ugly wars were going on, there were people like Eugene Debs that were opposing them and went to jail for opposing them. While slavery was going on, there were people like John Brown and Nat Turner who took up arms against it. And that we have a right to claim the good parts of American history for ourselves, and that the only way we're going to have a good America is if that good side of American history takes power. And that one of the biggest mistakes that we could ever make would be to write ourselves out of American history and to just hand over America to all the forces and all the evil things we don't agree with and just write ourselves out of it. And that's why I will never expatriate. I have no intention of expatriating. I want to live here. This is my home. This is my country. At some point they might choose to throw me in jail, even though I've committed no crime and I follow the laws. But that doesn't, our leaders are certainly willing to, lie and persecute people. And, they may do that to me at some point, but I'm not going to flee the country. I am going to stay here because I believe that I have to fight for the good side of American history, and that we cannot write ourselves out of American history. That would be a big mistake. That's my feeling. But you're right in all that you're saying. I will say that I don't hear that as much anymore. I don't hear America, love it or leave it, go back to your home country. I hear a lot of frustration with the country. And I hear a lot of conservative people that are frustrated for their reasons. I hear a lot of left-wing people that are frustrated for their reasons. But, there used to be this attitude, America is the greatest country in the world. If you don't like it, you should leave. And, I don't hear that so much. I really don't. I don't hear that attitude. I just don't. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, and maybe you hear it in the military and stuff, but I don't hear that as much anymore. But I don't think that we can intervene effectively in the political process if we write ourselves out of American history. And that's why I'm not a communist anymore, is because communists do that, right? There's just this, we hate everything about America. This country's evil. Well, okay, then you've given up your right to change it. We want to make life better in America. And we say the only real future for America, the only good future for America is breaking out of imperialism. And that the people of America have a common enemy with the people of the world, and that these wars that are being waged are not benefiting the American people, and that we are the American people's advocate against the people that are destroying their lives and jobs and setting up a police state. and that we can't just point and disgust at America. We have to organize, and we have to build a serious movement. And that's not something everyone's cut out for. I mean, God works with different people in different ways, right? People have different missions in life. And so I'm not judging you for expatriating. You have the right to do that. And I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm just saying that I feel like, as someone in America who has to organize, I have chosen not to take that approach. And, you watch me and you agree with me, to some degree, and you're just kind of sharing your perspective. And I respect that. What I don't appreciate is people like Ben Norton. Ben Norton is a rich kid who has expatriated. He's left America. He lived in Nicaragua for a while. He lived in China. And he has a huge platform, a huge inflated platform. And as somebody who is, I guess he's an anti-imperialist, he supports Russia and China and all of that, but he's expatriated. He left the country. He then condemns me for organizing the way I do, and saying, oh, Caleb's a fascist. Caleb's pandering to patriotism. You can't be a patriotic socialist and all this. Well, Ben, if you know how to do this better, then come back and do it. Come back and do it. Come back to this country and build a movement, Dan. Or what's his name? Not Dan, Ben. If you know how to do it, come back and do it better than me. But you ran off to some country, and you're just a rich kid with a platform, and you get on there and call me a fascist and a white supremacist, even though my anti-racist record is a mile long, because you're triggered by flags. Well, how dare you? You know what I mean? And you ran off to be a rich kid in China or a rich kid in Nicaragua, and yet you want to tell me that I'm bad for trying to build a movement in this country that could actually win, right? I will never forget when Ben Norton, who was living in Nicaragua the night that Roe versus Wade was overturned, he tweeted out, this is just what an idiot he is. He tweeted out that anyone who's against abortion is a fascist and a white supremacist. He's living in Nicaragua and routinely supporting the Nicaraguan government. Nicaragua has the strictest anti-abortion laws of any country in the world. The Marxist, Sandinista, anti-imperialist government has the strictest anti-abortion laws of any country in the world. So how in the world can he sit there and say, oh, anyone who's against abortion is this? And that's just right there. It just shows you that, like, he's an idiot, right? He broke with Max over COVID. Yeah. And he is of this school of people that he thinks he's not really against imperialism. He just hates Americans on a cultural level. He's against country music. He's against the Bible. He's against the flag. He's against guns. He's against anything culturally American. And so he's left the country as a rich kid, and he just sits there and he just hates everything American. And I guess the right wing conservatives are more American. They're more what he hates. And it's not about economics. It's not about imperialism. It's just about hating Americans. It's just about hating America, right? And I'm not cool with that. I'm not, right? I love America. I hate imperialism. And I hate what imperialism is doing to America. And I'm a champion of the American people and their struggle against it. And I want to bring back and amplify the good part of America and lead the American people to stand in solidarity with the people of the world and rebuild an America beyond imperialism. That's what I want, and that's what I'm fighting for. I'm not just, sitting back and condemning America. Danny Haiphong does the same thing, right? And it's cheap. It's really, really cheap. And it's also, when it really gets down to it, they pretend they're pandering to Russia and China. They're not. They're pandering to Democrats. They're like trying to insert anti-imperialism into woke, and that won't work because woke is bought and paid for by George Soros. You're not going to be able to insert anti-imperialism into woke. You won't be able to do that. So, I do want to share that. And that, Lenin wrote a very powerful essay about why he was a patriot for Russia, right? And why he, as a patriot of Russia, even though he considered Russia to be an imperialist country, he was a great Russian patriot. So there you go. But anyway, we'll get to the next question. So this is a question. This is a fair question. Okay. The way he's framing it is a little strange. But someone who calls himself anarcho-Menshevik wrote in, from the anarcho-Menshevik perspective, we actually support people's lives getting worse, especially in the imperialist countries, because it leads to revolution. We also don't support activists who try to fight imperialism because they're authoritarians trying to stop history from taking its course. The victory of imperialism leads to revolution peacefully. Just want to make this point, and this perspective is not understood by almost anyone. Well, it's not understood by almost anyone because it's wrong, right? So there's a couple things that you said here that we just need to go through. So first of all, you said, We support people's lives getting worse, especially in the imperialist countries, because it leads to a revolution. Well, why haven't we had a revolution then? Life is getting worse. People's lives getting worse does not lead to a revolution by itself. It can be a factor, but a revolution requires three things. Number one, a serious crisis in society, a crisis so serious that even the ruling class is divided. Two, mass rebellions and resistance among the masses of people. And three, a revolutionary organization capable of transforming those mass rebellions and resistance into a struggle to seize political power. And if life just gets worse, life gets worse all the time. Just things getting worse doesn't lead to a revolution. That is a complete delusion. That is false. If things get worse, but there's no resistance and there's no movement opposing it, right? And the people just sit back and take it, that does not help at all, right? If life gets worse and nobody does anything, everyone gets demoralized and they feel more and more powerless. If life gets worse and then there are mass rebellions and resistance among the people, and then a revolutionary organization is able to transform the mass rebellions and resistance among the people into a struggle for power, that's what leads to a revolution. So you're just wrong when you say life getting worse automatically leads to a revolution. That's false. And then that leads me to the next point. If you want life to get worse, why should the masses follow you? Right? And that's the thing. You need a revolutionary organization and you need mass rebellions among the people. But if life gets worse and you're supporting life getting worse, when the masses rise and rebel, they're going to be rising and rebelling against you because you're trying to make their life worse. So if you're advocating making conditions worse, when the masses actually do rise up, if they do rise up against the bad conditions, you're going to be on the wrong side, buddy, because you're trying to make their life worse. And so you're definitely not going to be able to transform their rebellion into a struggle for power. So you just don't understand how revolutions work. And I recommend don't read my work. Read the basic Leninist text. Read What Is to Be Done, right? Read Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder. If you are advocating against your own class, they will never listen to you, right? And, things getting worse in and of themselves doesn't lead to revolution. And it takes a mass movement, and then it takes a revolutionary organization capable of transforming the mass movement into a struggle for power. And if you are advocating against your own class, you're in no position to participate in a mass movement, and you're on the wrong side of it, and you're definitely not in a position to lead the masses in a struggle for power. So you can never advocate against your own class, right? That worldview, advocating against your own class, that is a worldview that's called, accelerationism is generally what it's referred to as. And it's a deviation because you want life to get worse under this system. Why should anybody listen to you if you're their enemy, right? And so that's an important point to make. And that again, you kind of have written the masses out of history. You think the masses are just automatic, right? That, their life gets worse and then they rebel. And that's not how things work, right? And you're kind of forgetting the role of the individual in history. You're kind of forgetting the role of mass activism and the people in making a revolution. You're not understanding how revolutions work. And then from there, you said, we don't, who try to fight and we also don't support activists who try to fight imperialism because they're authoritarians trying to stop history from taking its course. Well, how are we authoritarian for wanting to stop authoritarianism? So if we don't support the Nazis in Ukraine, we're being authoritarian. If we don't, the imperialists are the most authoritarian. They're going around the world and telling countries they don't have a right to control their own natural resources and their own economy. They don't have a right to engage in economic growth. That's pretty authoritarian. And it seems like they do very authoritarian things, killing people with drones and kidnapping people and holding them in Guantanamo Bay without charges and putting Nazis in power in Ukraine. That sounds pretty authoritarian to me. If you're saying the people trying to stop that are authoritarian, I'm not following you there. And that imperialism is just history taking its course. Well, no, imperialism holds back growth. And that's the other thing. You buy in. This is what annoys me the most. And he's making a mistake that a lot of leftists make and a lot of conservatives. Nothing annoys me more than when socialists and advocates of free market neoliberal capitalism and globalism agree with each other. And I see it all the time. And what he's saying here is what most socialists think. He thinks imperialism brings development. That's what he's saying. He's saying that it's just history taking its course. He's saying what Marx said. When Marx, supported the colonization of India, he said, well, this is bad, but it's going to bring capitalism to India, and capitalism will develop. Well, actually, the British didn't bring capitalism to India. They burned all the looms, and they forced the people to import their cloth from Britain. And the British, they didn't liberate the people of India from the caste system. They reinforced the caste system as a way to keep the Indian people divided and underdeveloped. British colonialism in India, you look at it, it didn't develop India. It reinforced all the backward, authoritarian practices like the caste system. It prevented them from developing their own industries. Imperialism does not bring development. And the left, the woke people think it does. They just are against development. They think growth is bad. Okay? And the conservatives think it does, and that's why they advocate it. Oh, free trade is going to make countries wealthy and raise people out of poverty. No, it doesn't, right? And you're buying into the neoliberal argument. You think imperialism brings development. It doesn't. It doesn't. And the woke left reinforces your delusions because the woke left thinks imperialism brings development. They just think it's bad. Classic example of this. After Trump was elected the first time, Salma Hayek made this abominable film called Beatrice at Dinner. And I sat through it and I was sitting there in the theater. And that's when I realized I wasn't a leftist because I understood economics. And I watched this film, Beatrice at Dinner. And I watched this film and I liked John Lithgow, the actor. He played the villain. And I watched this film and I was just like, this movie is this is where the left is. This is what leftists believe about Trump, about capitalism, about economics. And it's wrong on many, 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 many levels. So I'm going to show you the trailer for 2017 Beatrice at Dinner. And I'll just explain, like, I sat in this theater and that's when I realized I was not a leftist because this has absolutely nothing to do with my understanding of what imperialism actually is or economics. So we'll put on Beatrice at Dinner, right? We'll put it on and, and this is like, it wasn't just that I disagreed with the emphasis of this film. This film, I was on the wrong side of it, right? Beatrice at Dinner. I've talked about this before, but it's important. This movie politically is abominable, right? And I like Salma Hayek's acting. I really like John Lithgow's acting, but it was an awful film. So here's the trailer.
This is my dear friend, Beatrice.
Hey.
Nice to meet you. Beatrice is a healer.
I do massage, sound therapy, Reiki.
This woman is a saint. It's like birds fly out of the sky and land on her shoulder.
Aw, it's like Snow White.
Can I get another bourbon, hun?
Oh, no, Doug. This is Beatrice. She's staying for dinner.
Oh, you were hovering. I just figured you were part of the staff.
Oh, I know you.
Doug's famous. He's been on the news.
I don't know why. I think I know you.
Ever dance in Vegas? Thank you for having us at your stunning home. I couldn't be more pleased at how smoothly this whole process has gone. Alex, if any of those efforts were illegal, I do not know you, nor was I even here tonight.
Neither was I, and it's my house.
I would just like to say to Kathy and Grant, thank you for having me. When I first came to the United States a long time ago.
Did you come legally?
Yes.
Oh, this tenderloin was amazing.
So was the fish, so buttery. So, Doug, you build hotels.
I just own them.
I always had inside me the desire to be a healer.
Good for you. You're working. You're contributing.
We're going to South Africa in a couple of days. It's true what they say. Those animals would basically be gone if it wasn't for the hunting.
I don't consider it murder. It's like this original dance of man and beast, the struggle for survival.
Are you for real? You killed this animal? Hey. You think it's funny? I think it's sick. You think killing is hard? Try healing. You can break something in 2 seconds, but it can take forever to fix it.
Sounds like you have a pretty tough job.
I think that fate brought us together.
For what?
I don't know. Revenge, maybe? You think that you can hide up here behind these gates and that everything is gonna be all right?
The world doesn't need your feelings. It needs jobs. It needs money. It needs what I do.
The world doesn't need you.
Doug is a great philanthropist.
Shut up, Kathy.
Hi, Chihuahua.
Okay, you're done. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
What were you thinking? My relationship with that guy paid for this house.
I kind of feel like I don't even know you. You don't know me.
This can't possibly end well.
Yeah. So I don't know who a narco-Menshevik is, but he basically has the view of this film, right? And the film, basically, the right-wing villain is played by John Lithgow, and he's a capitalist who builds things. And at one point he says, I don't like those bankers who just make money out of nothing. I want to build things. He's a builder, a constructor. At the same time, the main character is Selma Hayek, who is this magical indigenous healer who is against economic growth and, doesn't want economic growth and all of that. And like, she's this magical indigenous person who lives in the woods and has natural healing powers. And John Lithgow wants to build roads and highways and that's what's wrong. And that we need to get back to nature. And you watch it and it's like John Lithgow is supposed to be imperialism bringing development, except it doesn't, right? Why Nicaragua is a country in Central America. Their revolution, one of the things they've done is they've paved the country's roads. They have amazing roads in Nicaragua. When I spoke with the son of the president, Laureano Ortega, we talked about how amazing their roads are. They fully electrified the country. The imperialists didn't do that. In Nicaragua, where they had an anti-colonial revolution, it was the socialist government that electrified 99% of the country. But you go to Honduras, that's still under the control of the imperialists. Big chunks of Honduras don't have electrification, don't have paved roads. You go to Guatemala, that's still under the hands of the imperialists. Big chunks of the country don't have running water, don't have electrification, right? Imperialism doesn't bring growth. Imperialism holds back growth, right? That's the point, is it keeps these countries underdeveloped. And the revolutions that these countries have are to develop. And you believe what the leftists believe, that is that the imperialists develop countries, and you think that's good because it'll lead them to have some kind of revolution. Well, they don't, right? They don't. That's the point. These countries have to have revolutions to develop. If it wasn't for China, if it wasn't for Russia, if it wasn't for the Soviet Union, if it wasn't for the Islamic Revolution of Iran, if it wasn't for the Union of Sahel States and Ibrahim Traore, these countries wouldn't develop. And the parts of the world that are still under the dominion of the imperialists are wildly underdeveloped. You think imperialism brings development. It doesn't, okay? And the left thinks that. They just think development is bad, and so I understand why you might believe that, right? You think it's Beatrice at dinner, and you think anti-imperialism is anti-growth, right? You think that we as leftists, we think growth is bad. We think the evil capitalist is paving the roads, and, you think it's Fern Gully, right? You think we're Fern Gully. And we're not Fern Gully. We're not Fern Gully, okay? I'm not Beatrice at dinner. I'm not Fern Gully. The economics of imperialism, I am pro-economic growth. And if you're pro-economic growth, you shouldn't be pro-imperialist. You should be anti-imperialist. Who pays for environmental activism, my friend? Who funds the Sierra Club, right? Who is it who's always passing new laws at the United Nations, trying to prevent new regulations and new treaties, trying to prevent African countries from having power plants? Who's doing that? It's not the communists, right? BlackRock, the biggest Wall Street, London financial corporation, is going around to the developing world trying to tell them that they can't have electrification, that they can't have things. You just don't understand how imperialism works. You buy into the neoliberal understanding of imperialism. And this is what drives me crazy. The left buys into it, and they just think it's bad. They think capitalism does create endless growth, which it doesn't, and they think that's bad. And the right says capitalism creates endless growth. Capitalism has a built-in problem, the tendency of the falling rate of profit. The socialist math video I just showed. Capitalism doesn't create endless growth. Growth is good, but capitalism and the irrationality of the market prevents growth. And that's why I cannot stand socialists and communists, is they don't believe in growth. The whole point of the Communist Manifesto, critique of the Goethe program, the Communist Manifesto, all of this, Marx is saying we need a system that can generate enough growth that we can wipe out poverty. But now the left thinks growth is bad. And they think, well, the problem with capitalism is it just creates more and more growth. That's not true, right? That's not true. We've got an economic system where AI, artificial intelligence, which should be a great thing, is leading to mass poverty. That's the problem. We need abundance, and within our irrational systems, the more abundance we have, the poorer people get. Right? That's the problem. That's the problem. So I hope that you get it. Michael and Bayonne pointed out that the fireworks are going off. Everyone's celebrating that. The Knicks won. I thought it was maybe the World Cup, but I guess it's the Knicks game. But there's fireworks going on out my window. Kaboom! And so the city of New York is in pandemonium. The New York Knicks won. That's great. Winning is good. It's good when your city wins. I don't really follow sports, but anyway. But growth is not bad. And anyone who tells you growth is bad is trying to kill you. And the main people that are against growth are the imperialists. The British went to India and they burned all the looms. What did Gandhi get jailed for? For boiling salt water and making his own salt, because they didn't want India to have its own industries. They forced India to import its salt from British manufacturers, right? Like that imperialism is about preventing development. Imperialism is degrowth. Imperialism is about preventing economic development. And that is so important. And so, the victory of imperialism is not going to lead to development. Imperialism is holding back development, right? So you just don't get it, anarcho-Menshevik. You don't understand the economics that we're espousing here. You just don't get it. Right. And you want things to get worse, and you want imperialism, and you just don't get it. You just don't get it on many, many levels. You don't get it. Okay. All right. And we got two more, both anonymous. Right. The first one says, so today the Venezuelans approved a U.S. airstrike on Tren de Aragua leader. They're going to privatize their electrical grid. You think the post-Rubio State Department's going to be less insane? I don't know why they wanted to arrest Maduro and put him on trial like Saddam and Milosevic. Are this psychotic? Look, the Venezuela situation, first of all, I have heard from Venezuelan people that are like pro-government in Venezuela, there is no Tren de Aragua, right? That the group doesn't exist, right? So this was a gang that existed in the 80s. So who did they kill? That's what I want to know, right? So what's going on there? Because my understanding was that Tren de Aragua was an anti-Maduro gang that existed in the prisons that was, trying to overthrow Maduro. But then it was explained, well, no, actually, the people that they're calling that, some of them were anti-Maduro activists, but Tren de Aragua doesn't even exist. It doesn't even exist. So who did they kill? That's my question. Who did they kill? And I'd be curious to get an answer about that. Privatize the power grid. That doesn't sound good. Can you confirm that that's actually happening? Again, I want to be cautious about anything I say about Venezuela. There's a lot of people that really want me to say Dulce Rodriguez is a traitor, and that may be the case. I don't know. I just don't know enough about it. And you got to be careful. You don't want to jump the gun, right? Venezuela's in a really tough spot. Their leader's been kidnapped, but they still have all the communes. Counter-revolutions are material, right? Counter-revolutions involve the apparatus of the means of production changing hands, and you can't miss that, right? When that happens, you don't blink and miss it, right? Revolutions are not socialist countries doing something that is wrong. Counter-revolutions are not socialist countries collaborating in ways they feel they have to, or that are opportunistic. The Soviet Union did things during Stalin's time and later that were not good. China did things that I talked about on the other night where they were collaborating with the West against the Soviet Union. But that's not the essence of counter-revolution. Counter-revolution is a material economic change. When the Soviet Union fell in the 90s, nobody missed it. Everyone could see what happened when the Soviet Union fell. And when Eastern European countries had counter-revolutions, everybody saw it. It was very, very, you didn't blink and miss it. Everyone could tell, right? So, if there is a full counter-revolution in Venezuela, we will know. It hasn't happened yet. It could be in the process of happening, or maybe not. We don't know, but I'm urging people to just be cautious. And I got to tell you, I am very suspicious. There is a layer, I am convinced. Look, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, right? Because people just don't know, right? And that there's a lot of weird things, but especially if you're somebody who's online talking like I am, and if you work in anti-imperialist media, there's a lot of out of the blue people come up saying, why don't you denounce this? Why don't you accuse Russia of leaving this country out to dry? Why don't you accuse the government, this government, of selling out its principles? It's very suspicious. We know that the enemy tries to insert and tries to play games in our circles. They've given up trying to get people to believe the imperialist narrative. They've given up on that. So the game that they play now is they want to manipulate and confuse the anti-imperialist forces. So what I urge people to do is don't go along with it, right? Don't go along with it and try to not play, divide and conquer games, right? We don't know. As of now, Venezuela is still, solidly, economically tied in with Russia and China. All the apparatus of Bolivarianism was built in, and the government's been doing a lot of strange things ever since Maduro's been kidnapped that I don't quite understand, and we'll know soon enough. Look, give it time. We'll know what the situation is, and we can say it. But until then, don't jump the gun and don't sow confusion. Don't sow confusion, right? Right? Don't sow confusion and I feel like, again, the enemy is whispering in people's ears and inserting narratives and trying to confuse people. Don't go along with it. Don't go along with it. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's my advice. And then the next question, which is also anonymous, comes from someone, right? Anonymous. Is the anti-Semitism of people like Ken O'Keefe and Candace Owens an age thing? What the hell are you, right? And who's pushing out 60 million Christians, Bolshevik Hitler narratives? How long did the Judeo-Bolshevism talking point exist in the West? Again, I have said many times, right? I don't think Ken O'Keefe and Candace Owens are a threat to anything. I don't agree with them about the history of the 20th century. And I think that the way they dismiss all things related to communism as an evil Jewish plot, I think that's a narrative they've lifted from the far right and from fascism historically, but they're confused. I mean, but if you look at the position they take, increasingly they Candace Owens, it was great that she's at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum and she's anti-imperialist and standing with the Palestinians and standing with Russia. Ken O'Keefe takes a lot of good positions. We disagree about what happened in the 20th century, and we certainly with Ken O'Keefe is a little bit different than Candace Owens. Candace Owens has her whole thing about the Frankists and all of that. Ken O'Keefe is a little bit different, and he's more Middle East focused, and so he has more of a narrative centered around different things. And I don't agree with their narrative, but they're not a threat. Ken O'Keefe is not inciting people to go commit hate crimes. Neither is Candace Owens. Like, neither of those people are a fascist threat, okay? They're people that are anti-imperialist and come to their anti-imperialist and anti-Zionist position from a right-wing and kind of confused place. And I could have a great conversation with both of them over coffee. Ken O'Keefe, I met him multiple times when I was in Iran. I found him to be a very charming man who, meant what he said. And he just, he comes out of the conspiracy world and whatever, right? Candace Owens, I've never met, but I believe that she is a very sincere person. I think she's wrong on a lot of things, but I think she's playing a very good role right now. And that this fascist baiting, right? Look, if I'll just be honest with you, right? I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 1987. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. So me becoming a communist made sense because I was against the status quo and capitalism was what America was all about. And so I became a communist. Especially after the Iraq War, as I became more interested in anti-imperialism, I became a communist. If I was a kid now in Ohio, I would probably be on the far right. I would. Because leftism is everywhere now, and it's bullshit. The leftism that's everywhere now. It's Beatrice at dinner. It's woke cancel culture trigger. And that's not only is that a problem, and that's why the synthetic left has got to be called out. And don't think that just because Trump has taken office and is doing all these bad things that now that makes the synthetic left not bad. The synthetic left is still bad, even though they might be nicer to us now. They don't consider us to be the main threat. The synthetic left is still bad. But that said, right, it's not just a critique of the left that I would be if I was a kid in Ohio right now from the town I grew up in with the political discourse as it is, I would be attracted to the far right. Why? Because the far right is what the establishment is constantly warning everyone about. And the left is everywhere, and the left sucks. The left absolutely sucks. When I was a kid, you couldn't find anywhere people making socialist or communist arguments. You just couldn't find it. I remember I tried to get an Angela Davis book from the public library, and I couldn't find it. Like, they didn't have one in the whole interlibrary loan system, right? And it was very hard for me to get my hands on anything left-wing. When I found a communist newspaper, it was like gold, right? That you couldn't find leftist arguments anywhere. and far right stuff was everywhere. I saw far right stuff and I didn't like it. It was racist. You know, there were people in my town. There was a kid in my town whose like dad had been in prison and his dad had Nazi tattoos and told his kids the Holocaust didn't happen. I didn't like that guy. That guy was a racist asshole. I didn't want to be like him. Right. So far right stuff was around. I saw far right stuff and I didn't like it. It looked like not that different from what Republicans believed. It was just a little bit more blatantly and openly racist. I didn't like Republicans, so I became left wing. If I was a kid now, you know, now the right is out there and they're talking against the establishment and everyone's constantly warning everyone about the dangers of the right. And the establishment has adopted this very, very toxic, stupid leftism where socialism is just an employee stock ownership program. And everyone who disagrees with anything, anyone who talks about biolabs is actually a Nazi. Right? That's the argument of these liberals, right? Not only is it that you're not allowed to talk about biolabs, even though they're real, if you mention them, you're probably a Nazi, right? A Nazi, you know, everyone's a Nazi. Well, you know, I can understand that some kid growing up in a mainly white town and a small town, and anytime he questions anything that's the mainstream narrative that all the normies believe, he's called a Nazi. He might be attracted to far right stuff. That sucks. That's bad. I'm not a far rightist. I don't think, you know, that there's anything racial or anything. I think that Hitler was one of the most evil men in history. I think the Soviet Union was great for liberating humanity from fascism. But the way discourse has developed, a lot of people are going to be confused. And if you just point fingers at them and say, you're bad, you can give up on ever trying to influence them. And the left right now the synthetic left has the upper hand. They have the upper hand and they are the main danger right now. And there are people on the right that are bad, especially Trump supporters that are supporting Trump bombing Iran. And there are people on the right that are not just wrong, but also dangerous. There are like people who commit hate crimes and things like that, like actual, you know, violent haters. And I'm not for those people. But as far as Candace Owens and Ken O'Keefe, they're just people that are confused and are trying to make sense of this political atmosphere. And they side with anti-imperialism and they have a confused understanding of what it's about. And some of those people may wake up and some of them may not. Right. But, some of those people may wake up and some of them may not, but you cannot do this. Right. You can't. And I continue to get questions like this. I have a feeling, I don't know who you are, someone. I have a feeling that this is almost like a deep state thing, and they want me to misspeak and call one of them a nasty name or something, and then they can clip it and send it to them. Caleb called you this is the games that they play. Look, there are a lot of people who come on this channel and want me to talk trash about other influencers and stuff. And I'm telling you, I disagree with them, and their history, but I'm telling you, they are not a threat. There are people that are a threat. Richard Spencer was a threat. There are plenty of people that were part of that Unite the Right event, in Charlottesville that were definitely a threat. David Duke is a threat, but these people are not a threat. Okay. Ken O'Keefe and Candace Owens are not a threat. They're not fascists. They're not Nazis. They're wrong. All right. They're wrong. And I will happily discuss over coffee why I think they're wrong. And they would happily tell me why I'm wrong. Right. People can disagree, but no. These people are not a threat. And we need to, Richard Spencer endorsed Kamala Harris. That's a big threat, isn't it? And he's one of the biggest cheerleaders for the Ukrainian Nazis, right? Richard Spencer is a threat, I would argue, right? He's a toxic voice, but Ken O'Keefe, Candace Owens, no, they're not a problem. They're not a problem. And Candace Owens in particular is playing a pretty good role. I haven't followed Ken O'Keefe lately, but generally, Ken O'Keefe tends to say good stuff. He supported Black Lives Matter, I remember. Ken O'Keefe has, generally taken some pretty, impressive stances. He's not a white nationalist, right? He is a guy who's very Middle East focused and has done a lot of heroic work for the Palestinians and is, I don't know, his worldview is not mine, but people can be wrong. And this problem of pointing fingers at people, a lot of people are going to think wrong things over the course of coming to think right things. I really wish people would go back and read the Prodigal Son. Go and read the Gospels. Go and read the Christian Gospels and read Jesus Christ's parable of the prodigal son. Jesus told a story about a father who had many sons. One of the sons took some money from the father and he went and spent it all and, went broke and all of this. and betrayed the family, did all this bad stuff, and he was left with nothing. And he came home, and the father celebrated, and the son came home and repented, and he had a big celebration that his son came home and repented for his wrongdoings. And the son who'd been good the whole time was annoyed with this, and he said, "Well, I've been good the whole time, and here this guy, this other son, he went away and did all these bad things. Now he comes back, and you have a celebration for him. Why?" And the father says, "Because it's better that someone who's done wrong comes to repent and do right than it is for somebody to just do right all along." Right? And that's a really important point in Christian theology. People who are wrong can become right. People who are doing bad things can repent and change. And when that happens, that should be celebrated. And they're not going to do that if all you do is, as they start to wake up and they're confused, you point fingers at them, right? I'm glad that millions of Trump supporters don't support bombing Iran. That's amazing. Trump was their leader. Trump was their savior, but they have enough common sense to realize that no, he said no new wars, and we're waging wars. Trump is not talking about Epstein. Trump works for the Israel lobby. Israel bad. That's good. And maybe they can come to understand that imperialism is the main threat. And maybe they can come to understand that Hitler and the ideology that Hitler espouses is just part of imperialism. And the USA funds Nazis in Ukraine, and the Soviet Union were the heroes in World War II, and that the Communist Party of China, maybe they can come that far, but they're halfway there. All right. They're on their way to that position. And if they continue to question US foreign policy and learn the truth, they'll get where we're at. And that's good. But they're not going to continue to question things if all of us who already know point fingers at them and shout Nazi. They're not going to come any further. Okay. And it's better that people that are wrong start to do right, than it is for all of us who just already know to just get high and mighty in ourselves, right? And again, go and read the Christian Gospels, right? People who do wrong can learn and do better, and that's worth fighting for. And you don't get that by engaging in purity culture and condemnation. You don't do it, okay? And I wish people could get that through their heads. And I don't know, maybe the person who asked this question is sincere, but I wish people would stop trying to bait me into calling Candace Owens names or trying to call Ken O'Keefe names. Stop it. Just stop it. Can you please stop it? Right? Because it's not helpful, right? When there's a voice on the internet that maybe comes from a wrong perspective that is starting. Candace Owens, do you remember when Candace Owens she used to be just a typical dumb Republican. She used to be just a typical neocon, Zionist, dumb Republican. Look how far she's come. Can we not celebrate that? Can we not be happy about the fact that she was just at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum? Can we be happy about this? Oh, no. She's a Nazi. She's not a fucking Nazi. She's not a Nazi. She's come a long way, and I hope she continues to come. I hope that she brings me on her show, or I hope that I get to have coffee with her someday, and I can correct her about this crazy stuff she says about Bolsheviks and stuff like that. But I really wish people would understand we need people to do we need people that are now blind believers in the system to wake up and come over to our side. That's what we urgently need, right? Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. Look how far she's come. Look at Tucker Carlson. Look how far he's come. Look who he used to be. He went after my friend Cynthia McKinney very viciously, and now he was one of the only people. He lost his show on mainstream TV for defending the Uhuru movement. His last episode, his last week of Fox News, he did a story supporting Chairman O'Malley on national television. That's good. People who've done wrong starting to do right is good. Now, that said, do they play games with us? Yes. And they insert agents into our ranks. Yes, they do. That happens. But when that happens, we can still use it for good. Okay? And sometimes that's easier than others. But, are there people that are now espousing an anti-imperialist line that are insincere? You betcha. You bet there are. Okay. And I can name some of those people. I'm not going to do it, but, they're Trotskyists. I don't know what a Trotskyist is. And no one in the world pronounces it like Trotskyist, except somebody who doesn't know what the word means. I think you know who I'm talking about. There are fakes among our ranks. That's true. There are people that have started espousing anti-imperialist politics who don't believe it. They either just don't care or they're lying through their teeth. that exists. Okay. But that said, as much as, it might be hard for me to do it with certain individuals, but we just got to understand, especially the anti-imperialist countries, they're going to do their best with what they got. When I tried to interview Joe Kent, he wouldn't talk to me, but if he had, I would have interviewed him. And I've quoted him many times. The people who said to me, well, Caleb, Joe Kent isn't sincere. He's, and I said, well, so what? So what? I don't care. Maybe he's not. That's what Pasta said. I don't think that guy is sincere. Maybe he's not. I don't care. If the fact that the former U.S. counterterrorism director is now saying that this war in Iran is wrong, that works for me. All right. If we can use that to advance the forces of anti-imperialism, and he's saying it because he doesn't believe it, he has an ulterior motive, but we can still use that. We can use the credibility that he has as somebody who was on the inside, and he's saying important, true things about why this war in Iran is bad. So be it. So be it. We have to do whatever we can do. It would be like, imagine you're in a war. Imagine you're in a war, right? And there's two armies, like the Revolutionary War. The British Army and the American Army are facing off. And a section of the British Army starts shooting at the other section of the British Army and saying, actually, we're on the side of the American patriots. And you're in the middle of a battle, right? And the American revolutionaries are shooting their muskets and the British are shooting at them. And then all of a sudden, a section of the British military breaks away and says, we support the American Revolution. And we're going to start shooting at the other British soldiers. What do you do under that situation? Do you say, I don't know, do they really mean it? I bet they're just mad about internal British Army stuff. They're not sincere. You take it. You're in a war. It's a life and death situation. Okay, they're on our side. Okay, maybe we'll be careful and we're not going to give them access to all our plans. Or we're not going to, but if they're shooting in the same direction, good. It's a war. You have to understand it that way. I don't know what Joe Kent's personal motivations are. That's between him and God, him and his wife and kids, I don't care. If somebody like Joe Kent comes out of the government as the former counterterrorism director and says all the true things he's saying, good. And I'm going to amplify it and I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to say good. And if he's doing it for a bad reason, okay. And I will treat him with suspicion. I'm not going to invite him over to my house and tell him all my private secrets. I'm not going to, give him my life savings, but good. Like, we got to think about this in a mature way, right, folks? We got to think about these things in a mature way. And if that's my advice, so Candace Owens, having come as far as she did, good, right? Ken O'Keefe being who he is, I don't agree with everything he says, but he plays a pretty good role on a lot of issues, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And we got to not have the attitude, fascism is not wrong think. Okay. Fascism is not wrong think. Fascism is capitalism in decay. Fascism is a mass movement to save capitalism with mass destruction and impoverishment and degrowth and an authoritarian heavy hand. Fascism is not wrong think. Fascism is not people being racist. Fascism is not people thinking wrong. Fascism is a real phenomenon that can be discussed, but it's not wrong think. And if you engage in this pointing fingers at people for wrong think, that's the synthetic left. That's what they do. And a lot of that wrong, that finger pointing, it leads back to supporting the status quo. That's what it leads to. And I've been a victim of this. And I noticed even before I had this channel, even back in 2015, there were people in the anti-imperialist media spaces that were always talking about Dugin. Oh my God, Dugin. And a number of those people have sold out. One of those people, Eric Draitser. Eric Draitser was a really big deal on RT and all the anti-imperialist media. Eric Draitser was always, every time I ever met Derek Draitser, there's this guy named Dugin. He's bad. Sure, we can be anti-imperialist. We got to watch out for Alexander Dugin. He's so bad. And there's all these people that are far right. And he was like constantly talking about how we shouldn't trust any of the other anti-imperialists. Well, look what he turned into. Eric Draitser, who used to be a pretty anti-imperialist guy, Eric Draitser has turned into an imperialist shill. He's turned into an imperialist shill. And I wonder if he was not an agent the whole time. He was spreading suspicion and fear. And I think Eric Draitser may have been an agent the whole time. I don't know. But every time I met Eric Draitser, it was, we're good anti-imperialists, Caleb, but there's Dugin bad. And, there's these other anti-imperialists. They're far right and they're right wing and they're fascists and and I'm telling you, something was going on there. right? And look what he turned into. Now he's pro-imperialist, so, just saying. All right, we're getting towards the end here. Is there a risk with capitalism or human nature that we might exhaust all the natural resources and destabilize the economy? Invisible hand might mitigate this through higher prices, technological innovation development programs. I suspect it's the former. I'm curious on your thoughts. Racecar, it's a good question, and it comes up a lot. And here's the thing. The way human beings use their natural resources changes. If we were still burning wood for a living, to heat our homes with wood and charcoal, we would have deforested the planet 2 to 3 times over by now. Okay? But we don't, right? We don't heat our homes with wood. We heat our homes with electricity and with natural gas. And that, yes, if we just continue to use resources in the exact same way we use them now, we'll run out. But that's not the history of humanity, right? In the last few thousands of years, we've gone from burning wood to burning coal, to burning natural gas and petroleum, to nuclear power. Humans are constantly reinventing our relationship with energy and our relationship with nature in general. And that, yes, you are right that if there was some permanent way of doing things, we would have run out. However, there is not a permanent way of doing things. In the 1970s, there's a book they published called The Limits to Growth. And it predicted we were going to run out of oil. We were going to run out of all these things. And it was right. If we had stuck to acquiring oil in the same way we acquired it in 1970, we would have run out by now. Except we invented deep sea drilling. We invented hydraulic fracking, and we moved beyond it. And humanity is capable of nuclear energy. Humanity is capable. It looks like fusion energy may not be that far off if you look at media from China. This idea that we'll always interact with nature in the exact same way we do now is wrong. It's just false, right? It's just false. And that's the flaw in that kind of argument. That's the flaw there, right? That's the irrationality, the problem with that argument, okay? And that's an argument that degrowthers often use. And that limited resources argument, that's the Malthusian argument. Oh, well, there's just not enough resources and the population is growing too much and then we have to have degrowth. Well, no, we just need to advance technology, right? We need to move toward energy sources that are more sustainable and that human beings are constantly, and this is one thing I like Lyndon LaRouche writes about, energy flux density. Human beings are constantly moving toward a higher state of energy flux density and that we need to invest in scientific research. We need to develop fusion energy. Yes, we can't stay on fossil fuels forever. That's true. But the idea that the way to deal with, the problems of fossil fuels is just have less doesn't work that way. That's degrowth. That's Malthusianism. And that is a recipe for disaster. All right. So Penny sent a Rumble rant for this video from China about human rights. So we're going to put that on. And I think we're then going to be done because I got church in the morning and it's after midnight and wild times. Here we go.
Trump has really exposed the hypocrisy of human rights values propagated by West. It's completely exposed. China has shown us that it is all about development, about dignity, about opportunities, about equality.
What's the forum he's talking about? This, the 2026 Forum on Global Human Rights Governance. This forum brought together over 400 politicians, scholars, experts from over 100 countries and international organizations, including the United Nations, to Beijing. And it's worth noting, most of them are from Global South countries. And they are bringing the demands and concerns of Global South people to public attention. So, what do Global South countries think of China?
China has become the role model of dignity, and that is what every Global South aspires to be. We have been, ruled by others for so long. Even after getting independence, there were some institutions which were created by the West. We were ruled by them, not directly by them, but by their rules, by their institutions. So we were still slaves. China has told us that how to get out of those shackles, how to be independent, how to practice self-respect and dignity.
If you look at medical care, every year China sends a medical experts to Rwanda, and these people have contributed a lot to the health care of the people. And once you have people who are healthy, then they are going to improve the economy of the country. And Rwanda is one of the countries in Africa that now have improved on the life expectancy. Also, we see a number of students these days coming to study from China. So knowledge sharing has been very important because after studying, they go back and contribute to the growth of the economy of Rwanda.
So China is expanding its hand towards other countries. We should take that opportunity.
You're from a country of China's neighbor. I mean, do you feel China's rise is a threat to the neighboring countries like yours?
I do not feel that because how China is welcoming everyone, I appreciate it. I do not think it's a threat because we are talking about the right to development, right? Everyone has the right to development and every state has the right to development. If China is doing well, it's going up, follow it. How it is doing so well, learn from it. Do not feel afraid or competitive, right? Rather, walk along with China.
To ensure that the fruits of modernization benefit all people fairly, China also released the 5th National Human Rights Action Plan at the forum. The action plan sets goals relating to healthcare, education, social security, environmental quality, and protections for vulnerable groups, and it will hold institutions accountable for implementation.
Consensus building should happen on two fronts. One is a form of declaration, a manifesto, bringing everybody together, bringing particularly the decision makers, the intellectuals together so that we could set the agenda. The other side of the consensus building should also be practice and action focused. The actions of the actual jobs and works that we can deliver through cooperation on the ground that has real life impact, that can transform people's lives for good. This is something that is also important. And I think this is also delivered in today's summit.
The most important thing I learned in this thing is that it is human rights or development is not about really money. It is not about technology. It is not about infrastructure. It is about the visionary, wise leadership.
Human rights are meaningful only when translated into concrete outcomes. And this is the goal China is pursuing within its own country and around the world.
Okay. All right. I forgot there's super chats. I haven't forgotten the super chats. We got 3 super chats to answer. Sorry. I didn't forget you. 3 people sent in super chats and they all deserve an answer. So Laura Loomer is actually on X today trying to claim that Tulsi is spreading Russian disinformation. I mean, that is so ridiculous. She released U.S. government files, but I saw that. And I mean, it's just, I mean, it's weird. I will say what was also weird is that before Tulsi stepped down, Laura Loomer declared that Tulsi Gabbard was anti-Semitic, even though Tulsi Gabbard has always publicly supported Israel. Even though she didn't publicly oppose Trump's war in Iran, she gave a very vague statement basically saying, I believe Trump has the right to determine as the president what he considers a threat. So, you know, it's very, very odd. You know, but Laura Loomer seems to have some inside information on Tulsi Gabbard, which makes Tulsi Gabbard actually seem better. Honestly, it indicates that maybe Tulsi Gabbard behind the scenes is opposed to Israel and is opposed to the war in Iran. I certainly hope that that's the case but you know, we don't really know. We can't be sure. But yeah, it is weird that Laura Loomer went after Tulsi Gabbard the way she did. That is interesting. And the fact that she's still going after her, even after she stepped down, and she's got this whole conspiracy theory that she's going to run for president and that Roger Stone is plotting with her. And it's interesting. All right. Hey, keep up your great work, Caleb. Been following you since your early days. Well, thank you. On RT. How did the Russiagate NATO left get so brainwashed into becoming indistinguishable from the Bush era neocons? Yeah, I mean, a lot of the older communists are just traumatized. I think that's part of it. And I think there is just an element of, like, you know, fighting conservatives rather than fighting, you know, the status quo. For me, one thing that it took me a long time to understand, right, is that for me, I took anti-communism personally, right? And I would respond, and I'm getting better about this, but when I would hear conservatives say really, really dumb things about communism, that I knew better about, I would get emotional because I felt like I was being personally attacked. But the more that I listen to conservatives talk about communism, if you take the word communist out and you replace it with obnoxious woke person, most of what they're saying is true. And it used to be there wasn't anybody speaking in the name of communism in the public space. And so when I met somebody, I could explain to them what I actually believe. Now there are all kinds of people speaking in the name of communism that are saying all these dumb things that are wrong, right? You know, conservatives are not lying when they say communists believe blank, 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 and that's retarded. Because in a lot of cases, you know, Vosh does believe that, right? Thought Slime does believe that, right? AOC does believe that, right? So at this point, we have to just call ourselves something different because, it's not that we can correct people about what communists actually believe, because it turns into a very strange conversation. Noah actually gave a pretty good talk about this at the CPI gathering, that, if you start trying to correct people, the anti-growth thing, for example, right? I have studied Marx's work. I know about the tendency of the falling rate of profit, the problem of overproduction, all of that. But none of the Marxists on the internet, none of the Marxists on TV do. And they all say growth is bad. And so conservatives who think we should have economic growth, they say, well, and these communists want to stop economic growth. It used to be I could argue against that. Now I can't, because they're going to say, well, you say that, you're just some guy I met. But I turned on the TV and they interviewed some famous Marxist professor and he said growth is bad. So he's the voice of Marxism. And who am I to, you can't start arguing with people about what communism really is. It's just not a productive conversation, because there are so many people out there that are, representing the ideology as this cringe liberal woke crap that they believe. So why argue with them, right? But for me, I guess I'm so used to the kind of right-wing anti-communist bullying. I will say one thing is the internet has really, in a lot of ways, hurt discourse. I mean, I used to hate libertarians, just hate them, because there are a lot of libertarian assholes on the internet that are just assholes, but there's a lot of communist assholes on the internet. Gulag memes should not exist. There's also, but for a long time, there was a layer of libertarians who, that their thing was helicopter memes, and they just loved Pinochet helicopter memes. We're going to drop all the communists out of helicopters. Yeah. So we love Pinochet. He killed communists. And, as somebody who knows about what happened to Victor Jara and all that, that made me really upset when I saw that. I was just really, really angry that they would say that. I was really offended, because I'm just like, oh, you claim to believe in freedom, but I guess you just want to kill people for disagreeing. And these people did all kinds of awful things. But those people they're just internet assholes. That's called edgelordism, right? That's, it's just kind of like the, racist, the Nazis on the internet that start, saying they think the Holocaust was awesome or that Hitler was cool. There's a lot of them, they don't even think that. They're just doing this stupid bullying thing of yeah, well, I think this thing that upsets you. Oh, I bet it makes you mad. So, it's one thing to think about, but for a long time, the image of a libertarian that I had in my head was an obnoxious person on the internet who, thought Pinochet was awesome, and that's not most libertarians. That's not all libertarians. That might be some libertarians, but also most of them are not like that in real life. They're like that in person, and they're responding to people on the left that are assholes. You know what I'm saying? I will say one aspect of it's just an obnoxious young man thing is there's this young man trait of young men like to offend people and then mock them for being offended. And it's like a bullying trait, and it's very annoying. And it's just and I see there's even non-political examples of this. One thing I've dealt with before, dealt with this on the subway. I'll be on the subway, right? You get on the subway, and some young guy gets on and he has either his phone or in some cases he has an actual speaker with his music blaring on the subway. And he comes on with his music blaring. And he has this look on his face. He looks through the train yeah, would you not like my music? He wants someone to get into a fight with him about it. And it's annoying because we all don't want to have a fight. We want to get to work or get home or get wherever we're going. and we don't want to hear his music. We have our own music with our headphones, but he brings his speaker or his phone pumped up really loud and blasts his music. And he gets this look on his face like, yeah, I annoyed everyone on the train. I'm such a tough guy, you know? And it's like, no, you're not. You're just an asshole. Everyone on the train hates you right now because you're blasting your music all over the train. And we're all trying to get to work, and you could get headphones, and you have headphones. You're just being a dick. And they're always, and what they want is for you to say, could you turn your music down? And then they immediately will go, no, I won't. Want to fight about it, you know? And it's annoying, right? And I mean, that's just bullying behavior. That's basic bullying behavior. I'm going to annoy you, and I'm going to annoy you, and then you're going to get annoyed, and that's going to embolden me more because I can see I'm getting a rise out of you. And so you have to then ignore the person, which is difficult because they're being obnoxious. And then when they don't get the thrill of knowing they're bothering somebody, you know, they go to the next train car or whatever, you know. But it's really obnoxious. It's like real tough guys. That's great. So you annoyed a train car full of people. I mean, great achievement in life. He wakes up in the morning. He's like, well, you know, what did I accomplish today? I made everyone in the subway car mad at me. Good for you. You know, I hope you feel good about yourself, you know, but it's like, there are certain people that just act that way. Right. And this, you know, this internet culture where people are like, I love Pinochet. He killed communists. It's awesome. That's what they're doing. They don't really think that. They're being annoying, and they don't care. They don't really care about politics. They just, and also there are people on the left that are being just as mean. And, oh, I love gulags. And, oh, yeah, you know, I mean, so, you know, you gotta not play into that. And I think it helped that I was not, when I stopped being in a communist activist group, I was able to kind of see things not as somebody who was involved in the shouting match, and watch the shouting match and go, oh, this is what's going on. Right. And that helped, you know. There's a lot of deflated narcissism in America, really. I mean, there's really no way to put it. You know, I mean, there's a lot of deflated narcissism everywhere. There's a lot of people in our society who are very selfish. They don't really have the ability to connect to other people, but they also are not. They're not narcissistic in the sense that they're, you know, out there trying to achieve things at other people's expense. They're like defeated in their narcissism and bitter, right? And there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of that in communist groups too. I mean, you know, I saw a lot of that you know, but there's a lot of that just in society in general. And deflated narcissism is a very negative trait. But one aspect of deflated narcissism is that you take pleasure in torturing other people, because you feel that the world's been unfair to you. You feel that you're more important than everybody else. You basically are disconnected from other people and hiding in kind of a persecution fantasy. And so you then, you know, the only thing that you can really find pleasure in is harming other people. And like, well, getting revenge on other people because you think everyone else has it so good and your life is the worst. And, you know, it's an aspect of deflated narcissism, is that you kind of take pleasure in, you know, annoying other people, or, you know, fighting with other people or whatever. It's just a negative personality trait. So, yeah. And a lot of people, I guess, back to the question, a lot of people that are on the NATO left, they are responding to what they perceive as bullying from right-wingers. They take personally right-wing anti-communist rhetoric as if it's about them. And I don't know, it's many layers of confusion, but we just got to do our thing. And that's why we're not left, we're not right, we're CPI, right? And that we just have to be innovationists. We can't be on the left or the right team, because if you're too committed to the left team, you're going to end up supporting the status quo. Right now, that may change in the future, but right now the status quo is selling itself as left. And so we're not left anymore. We're not left or right. We're independent, right? So there you go. We're innovationists. All right. Your thoughts on the Pentagon releasing a third batch of UFO files? I don't know. Like, these files, they don't say aliens exist. I mean, it's just, okay, you know, yeah, there've been UFOs out there. All right. Okay. You know, I just, you know, it's like they're desperately trying to get the conversation elsewhere. Yeah, there's a lot of unidentified flying objects out there. And, you know, what is actually going on with that? I'm sure, you know, we will find out someday to some degree or other what's going on, but they're not giving us any like new bombshell information. It's all just kind of, you know, there's a layer of UFO personalities, people who've made their personalities telling alien stories. And then there's a drove of new documents, from my understanding, that say, oh, look, there's a bunch of things in the sky and we don't know what they are. Well, you know, we already knew that. And these UFO personalities have been around telling their stories for a long time. We're not getting any new information out of it. And I've noticed that a lot of these info drops, they don't tell us anything we didn't know. They just kind of, okay, so the government is now admitting that there's a bunch of stuff in the sky we don't know about. Okay. Oh, and now there's all these people, you know, coming out there who've been going around for decades telling their UFO stories. All right. They have the same stories about the aliens butt probed them or whatever. I mean, okay. I mean, we're not getting any new information. I always bring up how they tried to blame UFOs on Stalin. That's kind of hilarious. You know, the book that they published during Obama's first term, where they tried to say that UFOs were midgets that Stalin painted green or whatever. That was so ridiculous. That was funny. And the fact that Jon Stewart and all these people took it seriously, like it could actually be true, that was pretty ridiculous. So that's all I can say about that. Good info and analysis. I hope more people listen to you. Well, thank you. Well, you can help with that by boosting us, you know, by sharing this around, by emailing this to people, posting us on websites like Reddit, places like that. You can also help by joining CPI and becoming a member, you know, and, you know, thanks for all you do. Well, hey, I'm here. I'm doing what I do. You know, I'm good at what I do. Right. You know, and I do have serious, you know, beliefs, and I stick to them, and I'm really proud to do my job at RT. And, you know, look, they have tried so many times to make me go away. I'm not going away. I'm going to be here, and I'm not going to expatriate. I'm going to keep being in the United States. So, you know, I'm going to keep doing that. So, you know, I'm proud of what I do. I love what I do. So I'm going to put on one last little video. If anyone has any last questions, now would be the time to send them. You know, any super chats or any buy me a coffees, now would be the time to send any last questions that you got. I'm going to put on this last video. This is just another one of the promotional videos we've made. We've made 2 of these kind of promotional videos about CPI. This is a video about CPI. It's got CPI members talking, shows some of what we do. And then I'll answer any more questions that come in, and then we're done. So here we go. Jumping jacks, and we're good. All right.
So I decided to go to a Chicago workshop, and Caleb explained the economics of why our country is taking us to war. It's part of the economic system of globalism, imperialism.
The thing that struck me was that he was very passionate about what he was saying. Was very passionate.
Be myself and not be judged, you know, for who I am.
I knew about the Trotskyist to neocon pipeline, but I didn't know why that was. I thought it, you know, it's kind of a mystery. What I found by learning from Caleb is that the common thread is anti-populism. It's a distrust of the vast majority of working people.
The idea of defining capital is profits in command, and that's a brilliant definition to simplify it for people.
To try to actually build a community in the United States and also caring for one another.
I remember looking over the room and I saw all of the people in that room. It was a packed room. It was almost 150 people. And there was just this energy of acceptance, of goodwill towards other people. And they could just have a good time. And I remember thinking, like, you know, this is for me. You know, I could do this. I'd like to do this for my life. I want to be an anti-imperialist.
I was just looking for a real organization, an authentic organization that really wanted to had a positive message and really wanted to build up America.
Have friends who are like-minded in the sense of trying to find the answers of becoming a real anti-imperialist.
So I found it very enlightening, and I was inspired to start my own chapter of CPI up in Minneapolis.
And yes, I was pushed to be a better activist. I was pushed to be more socially oriented. But I was never made to feel like I was a bad person for being the way that I was.
The LA group, what a great
team of guys. It's just been such a rewarding experience.
And I've made some great friends along the way.
I remember feeling, for the first time in a long time, like I belonged somewhere. And I was never made to feel like I was a bad person for knowing things. People were interested in talking about the things that I was interested in talking about. And I could speak freely about my opinions, and people were fascinated.
He was talking about someone who drew a picture of him, and it was very funny. It was him in a suit and tie, which is what he was wearing, I think, that day that he was streaming. And he had, in this picture, there was him in his red hair that someone had drawn, and he was like, you know, supposedly like yelling, like, ah, you know, and I thought that was hysterical because they really captured the passion, and I think they were trying to be funny, but he showed that picture, and I hope he shows this picture because I think it's hysterical. It's not like sort of old man yells at cloud, but it kind of has an old man yells at cloud energy. But what he was really yelling at, as I got to know him as a person and look at his streams, was that he was yelling at what this country and what imperialism is doing to the rest of the world. And he was really trying to educate people to that effect. And having that level of passion is going to bring out different sides of you that some people may understand, some people may not get. But I certainly did get it because I have the same fiery, you know, passion as well. So in that, you know, we are all kindred spirits at CPI, but certainly seeing Caleb that first time on YouTube, on his live stream, just going off.
Mao Zedong, the leader of the Chinese Revolution, in one of his speeches, he said, if a person's political line is incorrect, his very soul is incorrect. Now, that's often misquoted or translated as, if a person has the incorrect political line, it is as if he has no soul. Well, I'm going to say that Mao had it backwards. I would say that it's not that if a person has the incorrect political line that he has no soul. I would say that if someone has no soul, then they have the incorrect political line. That's what I would say. And if we are not espousing optimism and hope, we have the wrong political line, no matter what we say. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. So tomorrow I'm going to have a video premiering all day. It's actually 10 hours of different CPI stuff from over the years. So enjoy that as it premieres tomorrow. And I'll be back probably Monday night. If not Monday night, I'll be back again soon. So yeah, thanks everybody. Buy my new book, please. You know, if you haven't gotten a copy of Imperialism and Anti-Imperialism, buy this book. There is so much in this book, right? It's a little pricier than my other books, but it's got a lot. It's almost 500 pages long. It's got so many different talks I've given and stuff. Go buy a copy of my new book. Get a copy of Imperialism and Anti-Imperialism. And yeah, I guess we'll be back. So I'm going to put on the closing music. Thanks, everybody. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.